It's actually a pretty decent platform. It costs me like $150,
A month or a year?
period.
Oh, not a subscription service. That's
No,
rare.
so we use a website called Appsumo, and if you want to look at software, I highly recommend them. It's basically, newer software companies that are just starting out, and they're gonna offer like bottom of the barrel discounts. Like everybody knows Monday.com, right? The
Yeah.
whole right. We have a competitor of theirs called Flowloo. Monday.com, for the size of team that we have, would be something like $130 a month, because it's like
Okay.
$8 per person per month, and like I can't not have the entire staff on it. With Flowloo, it was a one-time fee of $200, and I get up to 60 users. And yes, it's nowhere near as intuitive as Monday.com.
But
They're
still.
they're constantly getting better, and we've had one so far that went bankrupt. So the money you put in it is gone. One company's been bought out, so that's kind of changed some things too. But hey, I love them, and like they have a deal right now for Sticker Mule, $9 for 50 holographic stickers. Like, that's a great deal. But we buy software from Appsumo pretty often, and Switchboard was one of them, and I think it was like $60 or $70. Maybe it was $150 straight out, and it's been great. I mean, there's Restream, so there's Restream.io. That's totally free. That lets you stream to multiple platforms, but it adds like a 45-second delay.
Ooh.
And there's already like a 20 to 30-second delay between what we say and what everybody else hears on the internet. So that's the fun stuff. Allison saying hi.
Hi, Allison.
Allison is one of our viewers from the UK. So
awesome.
It is late afternoon, early evening for her. I'm sure it's dark and gloomy. It's just the UK, so generally speaking, that's pretty accurate. But we have people, generally hanging out from all over. I don't know. I think I told you Tim from TH3D randomly showed up on the last podcast, and it was almost 4 hours long because he's like, "Can I come on?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's just do it. What the hell? Let's just go for it. Let's have some fun." And yeah. But that one I was so concerned because we had two people on the podcast. We have Alan and Tim, and they're effectively competitors with each other, and yet they're great friends. Alan's fully open source, so if Tim wanted to copy it, he could. But it looks like we can try to get something moving between them. But Tim is such a great guy. Like, I did another live stream earlier in the week where I was trying to fix an Ender 5 Plus.
Yeah. How'd that go?
She said, Allison says it's 6 p.m., bright and fairly warm.
Whoa. And she's inside?
Huh?
And she's inside?
Apparently, yeah. Wait, it's bright and fairly warm in the UK, Allison. Why are you watching the podcast? Go outside, enjoy the sun. I think that's like one of your 2 sunny days a year, right?
Wait, what does bright and fairly warm actually mean in the UK?
That's fair. Here, I have to convert it. It's 31°C here right now, and it's partly sunny according to my the Windows update that now tells me my temperature and cloud cover.
I instantly killed that.
I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm like, you know what? I have a Google phone. Like, I have a Google Pixel phone. I use Windows. Everything listens to me. Everything's taking my data. At this point, it's just a fact of life. And the amount of work that it's going to take me to kill half of this stuff is more than I care to do.
Right now it's 26 and sunny. 26 degrees C and sunny at my place.
And we're going to go over where you're at because this is cool. And we met on a Women in 3D Printing event, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the mentorship event. So we'll talk about that as well. That way, anyone that wants to get involved, be a mentor, be a mentee, they can. Because Women in 3D Printing is pretty awesome. But I think we've given people enough time to come in and hang out. So let's get this bad girl rolling. This is Making Awesome, Chapter 46. It's a two-piece today. My brother is hanging out in sunny Miami, Florida, for my grandmother's 91st birthday. So before we get too far, I want to wish my grandmother a happy 91st birthday today. Hopefully I will get the chance to video call with you guys later today, but because of my back, I'm unable to make the drive, so I apologize to the entire family. But as soon as we get some surgery, hopefully, that's the first place I'm going, is down to Miami. Not to go hang out on the beaches, because this white boy don't do any of that, but to go see family that I haven't seen in like 3 years. But I am joined by the awesome Cole Goldstein. He is an educator in the 3D printing industry, does all manner of awesome when you're looking at furniture. He's building his own Scara arm 3D printer. We're going to talk about that coming soon. But Cole, I'm going to pass it off to you. Tell the folks at home who you are. Give us the Backstreet Boys, who you are, where you're from, what you've been, and as long as you love me.
Thank you. So I was originally born and raised in Philadelphia. I went to school. I graduated with my Bachelor's of Fine Arts at Kutztown University in the crafts department with a concentration in furniture design. I also worked in fine metals and product design while I was there. And then I went on to grad school at Maine College of Art, where I had my Master's of Fine Art in Spew Art. Prior to that, I did all sorts of really crazy making, which I'm sure we're going to jump into at some point during this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right now I currently am the director of advanced manufacturing technology at Johnson College. And I work in the industrial electricity division with a couple great people, like Mr. Rick Forns, who I want to give a great shout out to. He's been a mentor for me education wise, and also just a really great friend. He teaches the electronics engineering technology department. And one of the craziest guys you'll ever meet in your entire life. You should have him on sometime.
Hey, get him in contact with us. We are making a big push right now to get speakers and guests on the podcast. So if you are listening to this and you're like, this sounds like fun to talk with some crazy guy that takes no drugs of any kind, but somehow still has an abundant amount of energy, you guys can reach out to us. We have a public email in our YouTube channel. It is youtube@3dmusketeers.com. And I respond to those emails directly. So if you want to come on the podcast, come hang out. This is your opportunity to do that without needing to be a part of our Patreon, because the Patreon is not live. And eventually we're going to lock that behind a paywall, because I can. But yeah, Cole, this is so cool, because we met on a Women in 3D Printing event. And for those that don't know, myself nor Cole are female, as far as I'm aware. We don't identify as female or any of the like. And we were still there because we want to be able to support women in 3D printing. I think there's one thing that everybody in this industry can agree with, in engineering in general, we don't have enough lady makers. And there are a lot of very valid reasons we don't have lady makers, and a lot of it is because this community is inherently toxic and people kind of suck sometimes. And women in 3D printing are really pushing to take care of that toxicity, bridge the gap, and help women, ladies, and girls all over get involved in 3D printing. And part of it is their mentorship program. And when I saw that, and I'm sure you had the same feeling, we're like, we can help people. I can meet other people in this industry, because all of us suck at marketing. Like, all of us suck at it. It's like, I can go meet other people and help people at the same time. Signed the frig up. And so
I was actually introduced to it through Mara Hittner at Matter Hackers.
Mara is awesome. I still have not heard back from her. We did a video on matter control, and matter control auto opts you in to collect user data, which is a gross violation of GPDR. It's illegal outside of the United States. And it derailed my... Matter Control is actually a pretty decent software, but it derailed my entire video about Matter Control. And I reached out, and I have heard nothing. Now, I have Mara's number. I've been debating on just, like, playing the game of just like, oh, I have your number, I can just call you. But I'll have to send a follow-up email from my personal email. Sometimes the company emails get spam filtered. But yeah, because I want to get a response from Matter Hackers on this, and like maybe it's just shows you that it's opted in, but it doesn't do anything unless there's a pro. Either way, we have Heather here. She's hanging out, and guys, if you are joining us on YouTube, please make sure that you leave a like on this video. It does help the channel grow. And if you are over on Twitch or Facebook, I think you can like on both of those. Follow us on Twitch, I think is the right thing we're supposed to say. I don't know. I'm not a Twitch streamer yet.
No.
We're going to have a game. We're going to do gaming. We're going to do gaming coming up soon, because what's the one thing I don't have more of, but I'm going to have to make more of? Time. Yeah, time. Yep, so we're going to start a gaming channel. So we're going to do Minecraft and Factorio, all the logistics building games, some Satisfactory in there, and we're going to give the opportunity to our community to come and join us. So Cole, if that would be something you like to do, we'll have you on as well. But
yeah, right now I'm running a little SMP for me and some friends, and like I'm AFK right now from that. So
what's SMP?
Like a survival multiplayer kind of thing.
Okay.
So
I
yeah,
don't know what it means.
Yeah, so I'm running a little survival Minecraft world server for me and some friends, and like we hang out on there, we play, we build together. A lot of fun, and it's a good like little break from like the daily, run around. And
that's what I'm thinking. It's gonna be a great way for us just to hang out with people. I don't have to like be, I guess, mindful of what I'm saying. I can just kind of hang out, whatever, shoot the breeze with people, and not like worry about, oh, we have to edit that out.
Yeah, we also like we have like a little Discord we talk on, like we use that for voice chat. And like we've done some fun things, like decide that like rather than like at spawn having like little shops and stuff to try and sell to each other and create an economy, we're just like, let's just build to like have fun with each other. And like so like one person built like a villager trading hall, and another person built like a little beef hut, and like a restaurant, and just like have fun and like be a community,
See, like that, and I said, you know what? That's also a great way, one, for the entire staff to write off the purchase of Minecraft, right? Because we like half our staff have it, but a lot of them don't. Everybody's 1099, so it's all a write-off for them. It's a great way for us to do team building. And if I see them on Minecraft and they have work that they need to be doing, I can log in and say, hey, get it done.
Well, it's funny. Like we started off as like, I was talking to one of the guys I work with, Rick, about it in the lab. And a couple of students overheard us and were like, hey, we play Minecraft too. So we started a server with the idea that like some teachers can play with students.
That's cool.
Like in off hours. Yeah. And it became such a better like lifestyle, and like it spilled over into lab very quickly, where like they kind of come in to like hang out and talk and do things, and then they become more interested in working because like they know that you're not just some like high up person that thinks they're on a pedestal. Right.
You're another human being, which and what's the size of Johnson College? Because you're an educator there, so I'm guessing this is all about your interactions with students at Johnson, right?
Yeah. So we're a little under 500 students. We're on that cusp of like breaking that. Yeah.
You're real tiny.
We're real tiny, but it's like, it's a great environment in the sense of like, I generally have anywhere from 4 to 10 people in my lab at any given time in my classes.
So it's like real tight knit one-on-one.
You see the students, like some of the biggest programs like HVAC and electrical, they'll like have like 20, 30 students in a cohort or a year's worth of students.
That's good blue collar job too, man.
Oh man, like everything we do, the school did a really great job of marketing the idea of like they're essential workers, because we didn't have students that went out of jobs when COVID hit.
If anything, their jobs got more valuable.
Yeah, they got
whether or not they got paid more is a completely different story, but
hopefully that happened. But like like you've got people like radiology techs. We've got HVAC people. We've got electrical. We've got diesel mechanics. We've got automotive. We got us like in the electrical position. Yeah. So like, it's like we have a biomed technology department where all they do is fix like equipment for hospitals. So you can imagine how in demand they became during this.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal when you're looking at, everybody wants to get like this idea of a 4-year or 6-year path in college, get, a BA or a BS and then a master's. Hi, I'm one of those people. And then they're gonna sit at an office job, a 9 to 5, that they may not like, and look and say, well, wait a minute, what am I actually using my degree for?
Well,
And
I read the statistic once that it was 70% of people with bachelor's degrees don't actually use the degree that they got. And that's kind of a crazy statistic, if that's even still accurate.
This is one I would normally call my dad and verify, because my dad's an educator as well.
Yeah.
But administrator, I guess. And if you guys want to meet my dad, the Father's Day episode of the podcast is a great way to meet Dr. Posner and learn all about him, and basically see the interaction between myself, my brother, and my dad. Because none of that was scripted. I promise you that is just how we act on a day-to-day basis. It's just a roast fest for 2 hours. But I went to a small college as well. So I went to St. Leo University, and on campus it's about 2,000 students.
Yeah.
Now, that's still a very small college when you look at, a state school, right? You're in cohort classes of 20,000, 30,000 people. Your lectures might have more students in it in a state school than all of Johnson College.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different experience. You are literally a number there. Where at these smaller schools, sure, it's a completely different type of education. But if you're the person that really wants that one-on-one experience, yeah, go to these smaller schools because you get it. I mean, I have 2 business degrees, but I took physics as electives because, I'm that kind of guy. And half of the class were people that were taking physics as electives, and the entire class was 12 people.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the great things about small classes is, we really get to know you. I have parents that, we just had an open house pretty recently, and I had a parent in there, and I said to her, I was like, look, I'm going to get to know your kid, we're going to become friends. And the first year, it's a 2-year school. The first year, we're going to give them everything under the moon. They're going to have all those different classes where they're going to be learning how to use, files properly, sanders, grinders, all sorts of stuff. We're going to be teaching them mills and lathes, and they're going to learn how to use some Arduinos and programming electronics, and they're going to have all sorts of different resources like that. And we're going to analyze them, and we're going to get to know them and see what they like and what they don't like. And then that second year, we're going to really push them hard in the classes that they like and they're doing very good in. We want them to learn all the skills. They are going to learn all the skills from the program. But the thing is that if your kid hates being a machinist, but loves being the electronics and fabrication side, like doing 3D printing, we're going to push them really hard in those classes. So we make them specialists in what they are. They're generalists in the sense that they can fabricate pretty much anything when they come out of my program.
Yep.
But they become specialists in the sense of if they're really into 3D printing, I will make you an amazing 3D printing technician.
This is what small schools are all about, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
This is what it's all about. Allison says, anyone want to pay for me to come and study there? Do you guys have scholarships that she might be able to apply for as a non-American?
There's probably, if she wants to, she can get in touch with me. If she goes to johnson.edu, she can go to the advanced manufacturing website, part of it, and please get in touch with me. I would be happy to help you in any way I possibly can. Get you in touch with the school and the right people, and maybe we can make something happen.
Allison, if you want, I'm happy to get you guys connected. I have everybody's email here. I have Allison's email. Yeah. She's emailed us before. And of course, Cole, I have your email. So I am happy to get you guys contacted because part of me wishes, I love that I have a master's degree. I love that I love that I have that college education, but there's just part of me that wishes that I could go back for engineering, that I could go back and I almost finished my certification to be a Haas mill operator,
Okay.
on my own. And that was before I got injured. And I've had to stop because it requires you to be in front of a machine to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't be like bending inside of a VF2 or something like that with a bad back. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop that because, ultimately knowing how to run CNC machines and knowing how to run a 3D printer, they are way similar than you expect, except it's all G code. It's just different G code.
Well, and it's funny because we actually teach CNC operations at the school.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we actually, you have 2 semesters of CNC. The first one is all G code based.
Nice.
You learn how to program G code completely from scratch. You learn what the difference between the G and M codes are.
That doesn't sound
all your
like
operations
fun.
are completely pen and paper.
I don't like that. I just want to cut chips, damn it.
Yeah, but you gotta learn. It's good because you learn what's going on. Like, how do you program in a manual offset and things like that. So we teach you how to do that, and you learn on 30-year-old hardened CNCs for those types of things. And then we have a brand new Haas VF1, and the second semester is CAD CAM. You take the Fusion 360 skills, and we teach you how to actually export for CAM operation, to actually operate a CNC using completely 3D based tech. And what's cool about that is that fall prior to that, they're actually doing the 3D printing class. So they're learning how to do even more complicated modeling in that class, and they're learning how to export to 3D printing. So like it's all coming together, and G-code in 2 different flavors, and like
Dude.
It's really cool to see.
That's awesome. And like that's a practical career path because that sets you up for CNC, and you can walk into a CNC shop and say, hey, I can not only run a CNC machine, but I can run 3D printers. And a lot of CNC shops don't utilize 3D printers. And I'll tell you, at least locally, I've called CNC shops to try to, sell services to them as a 3D print shop, right? And say, hey, we can make custom jigs, custom fixtures. We can increase your productivity beyond where you're currently at. I got called a communist more times than I care to admit.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's because I am young and I sound a little bit younger, or what it is. Now, this was also back previous president, so that might have had something to do with it. But I've never been met with so much adversity where I'm literally coming in. I'm like, literally, if anyone's going to be the communist, it's you. Because you're saying that we're just, the status quo is fine. I'm coming in telling you you can make more money by being more. This is literally the definition of capitalism. Don't yell at me and call me a communist.
I've dealt with that kind of thought process of like, hey, this is also what's worked for many years. Why should we change? But you know what? Like, as soon as like students come in and they want to like learn how to use it, I had a student who was, his great grandfather was a machinist, his grandfather was a machinist, all that stuff. And like, it becomes really interesting when they start adopting 3D printing and seeing the benefits of it. And it's like, you know what? Like, if you don't have a high heat situation, guess what? Most thermoplastics are going to be a fit for you. If you're just doing an installation jig, where you're just trying to fit some parts together and you just need them held in a certain spot all the time, guess what? 3D printing is supremely amazing, And
it's going to run fine. And the nice thing is you're cooling your parts anyways. And if your part that you're milling is getting hot, your speeds and feeds are wrong. The heat should be in those chips and not in the part.
Well, like we had a situation where we had to drill through 1-inch thick hardened Acme thread. And the first big challenge is how do you even put that in the mill in a vise to hold it properly and not destroy the threads. And so what we did was we actually modeled up the threads because McMaster is great about letting you export their models right into Fusion.
They're so great.
So we were able to make a 2-part mold in seconds. We 3D printed on a TAS-6. So we were able to do it very quick with a Moore head extruder with the 1.2 millimeter nozzle. We did it very quick.
Those Moore extruders are just so much fun. Do you print at the 1 millimeter layer heights and everybody giggles like schoolgirls? Oh, yeah. It's my favorite.
And we were able to chuck it up in the mill and be able to drill in same day. 4 hours later, we're able to have, You know, we could have 2 sets of soft jaws, basically.
Yep.
How long would it have taken to cut soft jaws for Acme threads in aluminum? You know,
Oh,
just the
man.
CNC operation of setting it up would have been hours and hours and hours.
And you're doing at least three tool changes on that. I mean, so you're
probably.
And if you don't have a machine with a carousel or an ATC, an automatic tool changer, you're gonna have to stand there the entire damn time. You're at 2 days. I mean, realistically, if you put everybody on it, you could get it done in a day. But
plus the cost of aluminum.
Plus the cost of aluminum. Now, why
those blocks would have been expensive.
I'm curious as to why you guys also model the threads rather than just undersizing the hole a little bit and then just cranking the vise down and letting it cut its own damn threads. It's hardened steel versus PLA.
Yeah, true. But like one of the things that I was just a little worried about was chatter inside the machine making the part rotate a little bit.
That's fair.
And just taking that stress off of the machine, that Kurt vise trying to like really clamp down. You know, we can have that thread that actually like holds it in place so it doesn't want to rotate as much. So you've got a more of a surface area grip.
And that's
it's 3D printing. I can do that. Where like if I had to do regular soft jaws, like traditional soft jaws, I probably wouldn't have done that because it would have taken me forever.
Yeah, I likely would have used. I was gonna say Delrin, but Delrin would have been the absolute worst plastic for this. But probably like an ABS or an HDPE, I would have just milled out a channel, and I would have I would have put the cheater bar on the Kurt and just tightened the ever-loving piss out of it and let it cut its own damn threads.
Yeah.
And like would that have worked? Probably, yeah, probably would have worked. And I would guess that's what most machine shops would choose to do. But when you have 3D printing available with a fast tool head like a Morstruder, which is a 1.2 millimeter diameter nozzle, and if you guys haven't seen 3D printing with a big, thick nozzle, like 3D printing, the layers that we do, like the stuff behind me is running at 200 micron layers, so 0.2 millimeters. With a Morstruder, you can run, they say up to 1.2, but you can't do that. You should run like 1 millimeter max on it. But imagine doing 5 layers at once. Imagine watching your extruder gear just freewheel, and you're not moving very fast. You're just dumping so much plastic.
The filament is just spinning at a constant rate.
Yeah.
You know, like it's funny because like I go to shows and I see people like looking at big spools from like IC3D and stuff and push plastic, and they go, I'll never get through a 25 kilogram spool, and I can kill a 25 kilogram spool in like, you know, a few months if I'm really printing a lot. If not, I can go through it even faster, you know, like.
We actively, when we're busy, we'll go through about 15 to 20 kilos a week. And now I'm buying single kilo spools because a lot of what we do does not encompass it. And these are Prusas. They've got filament runout sensors. I don't have to worry about it. The Lulzbot Taz 6 does not have a filament runout sensor. So you put big ass spools on it so you don't run out of filament.
We usually run a 10 kilogram spool on it.
Yeah.
On ours.
And that makes sense. The machine, the Wade's extruder that they have, a Greg's Wade extruder, it's a geared extruder for people that don't know. It is a very high torque feeder, so it is easily able to handle pulling from a 10 kilo roll. And that's like one of the benefits of 3 millimeter filament is that you must use high torque scenarios to pull the filament through because it is so large, and you end up with a fair bit of nozzle back pressure. But I always laugh because like when we print PLA on that Morstruder, we're printing PLA at like 260 C, where you would never ever print PLA that hot, and PLA shrinks a lot at those temperatures. So it comes out, and then all of a sudden you can physically see it shrinking. Yep. And you actually end up being limited by your flow rate and not by anything else. You're limited by how fast you can heat it up. And that's why hot ends like the Super Volcano and things like that exist. But that's really cool that you guys are using the Taz 6. Actually, a subscriber of ours, Lightspeed 3D, they just did an unboxing of the 747 Sidekick. But
nice.
I haven't been able to watch the whole thing, but I know he didn't pay for it, and I'm not entirely sure if that was obvious during the thing, but I know he didn't pay for it. But that's all right. I'm trying to get my hands on a 747. I want to compare it to a Taz 6, like so bad. I want
I'd like
to
to see that.
because like that's really what you're comparing it against, right? Because a lot of like when Lulzbot launched the Taz 6 back in 2015, 2016,
Yeah.
it wasn't much after that. It was one of the best bang for the buck 3D printers on the market, period. And at $2,500, it was it was not cheap. But Creality did not exist, right? Prusa was not producing good printers back then.
Well, we've been using the Taz for like 5 years, 6 years in the lab. They just
work. They're noisy as hell.
The only problem we ever get into is we need to change out a hot end, or like, we get a little bit of jamming, but that happens with every printer. You're never going to get around it.
Dude, I had a jam on a Prusa for the first time in longer than I cared to admit. It was the N Prusa right there, but I was running silk blue PLA filament, so I am absolutely going to blame the cheap Chinese filament before I blame the nice Prusa. But I will say the silk blue just looks, it's such a nice blue. It's like if I had to have a company color, this would be similar to what it would be. But I'm going to try to work with Green Gate 3D to get our own custom colored. I know you happen to have a pretty awesome relationship with Green Gate because they're local to you, aren't they?
They're not too far away. They're in Long Island, which isn't too far from us.
I don't know how far that is from you, to be honest.
It's like 2-3 hours.
Okay.
So you could do a day trip back and forth between us.
I could drive across the state in 2.5 hours.
What's up?
I could drive from one coast to the other in 2.5 hours.
Rich Silverfeld, who runs Green Gate, he's actually been in our lab on his way to Murph. He stopped by our lab, and he took pictures of himself inside of our large format 3D printer that we built. Harass Green Gate 3D to see photos of that, of him in there.
I'll message him on Facebook. Rich and I have been friends for years. Really before even I knew about Green Gate. As a guy in the 3D printing industry that requested me on Facebook, generally speaking, back then I said yes. Now I'm like, but this is my personal Facebook now. You can follow me on Twitter. And by me, I mean follow the company because I don't have a Twitter. I don't have an Instagram. And I don't use I literally do not use social media. I am the worst business owner when it comes to marketing. I have staff for this. It is not my job. I do not like social media.
But he took pictures inside our large printer that our students built that has around 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot build area.
Damn.
Yeah.
Core XY?
Yeah.
Is it a static Z in the Voron style where the carriage moves up and down, or does the Z move?
It's the carriage moves up and down. So we have dual Zs on the outside. It's a giant cube. Dual Zs that move an entire carriage system up and down the gantry for the X and Y system. So the build plate is completely stationary because we're going to upgrade it to a heated build plate. Right now, it's just a plywood with an acrylic, which you'd be surprised. You know what? Like taking the notes out of like G-Create and how they talked about how PLA sticks perfectly fine to acrylic. And let me tell you, it really does. But we have a static build plate because we want to make it a heated build plate. Once you start adding 1/2 inch aluminum, trying to move those weights up and down, and it wasn't worth it to us.
And then the power to heat it.
Then you start printing on it, and you add more and more weight, and it's like, how big do the Z motors need to become to move that? We're like, well, we could just keep the exact same weight overall and make the whole gantry move.
And that's the trick. I wish I could move it. We've got a big D-bot, nowhere near the size of yours, but it's 400 by 400 by 788. So it's 16 by 16 by 31 inches. But it had a triplet of Z lead screws, and they're terrible, right? They're 8mm lead screws, so they're like, I mean, honestly, you could just shake them. But we recently worked with Florida Polytechnic University, and we had a team of students for their capstone actually design and build a brand new Z-axis that uses SBR12, so they're 12mm shafts, but they're drilled and tapped on the back side, and they've got a big buttress so that you can screw them into something, as well as a 1605, so it's a 16mm ball screw. This entire Z-axis assembly, without the bed or anything like that on it, weighs more than the entire printer. So it's going to add a fair bit of rigidity to this printer, but It's now a fully cantilevered bed, which
Mm-hmm.
normally I'd say, big problem, don't do cantilevered beds, because most people don't build cantilevered systems that weigh 45 pounds. They build cantilevered systems similar to the Ender 7, which uses V-wheels and, you know, a lead screw. If you're lucky, it's a lead screw,
Yeah.
not like an Acme thread. This is supremely overbuilt. It's going to add rigidity to the printer. So, and like, that was a cool instance for me of 3D printing in education. I've got a good relationship with Florida Polytechnic. We've been working with them for years now. We are their backup print facility. They have 50-something MakerBot 5th gens. So they have like 5 useful printers. And they're actually converting over to Prusas. I work with...
and a very active Amazon account, I'm sure, to fix their printers.
See, if they're having an active Amazon account, they should be using our Amazon affiliate link, which of course is listed in the description. That's right. I did a decent little self-promotion in there, because Amazon affiliate costs you nothing, but it helps me grow.
They're great. They're great.
It's great.
They're great ways to help local people.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, if you're not using it, make sure you use Amazon Smile. It donates half of 1% of all of your purchases to a charity of your choice. And when you're a company like ours and you order like we order, we were able to donate over $1,000 last year.
That's awesome, though.
But the charity that we support is a Fab Lab locally that is in... It is in a very disadvantaged neighborhood. Like, the median household income for a 1 mile radius around the facility is $17,000. Yeah, like, that's real
rough.
poor. Real poor.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because they've gotten grants from the city, they've gotten donations that have enabled them, for people in certain zip codes, to utilize their facility free of charge.
See, and that's the thing. That's one of the things that I really am interested in is, like, you know, how do you help those kinds of people? Because, like, I was very lucky in very different stages of my life to have access to certain things.
Yep.
I mean, I came from a decently well-off family, but not like, you know, super crazy wealthy or anything. Like, I paid for all of my school myself and things like that. But, like, you know, how do you help people like that? Because, like, once you start teaching them skills, it goes back to that old parable of, like, teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life, you know? And, like, companies don't really care. They don't, I shouldn't say they don't care. They don't take into consideration, like, did you come from disadvantaged situations when you were younger? They care about the skill sets you have. So it becomes more of an equal playing ground when you say, like, hey, I have this ability to, like, fix 3D printers and run 3D printers. They go, oh, okay, I want you. They don't go, hey, oh, you went to school at Harvard, you went to school at, like, Penn State. What's the difference? They don't think that way. Your schooling helps, but it doesn't necessarily automatically get you a job.
Exactly. And I've told people, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. When we hire people, I ask for a resume to make sure that you know how to write a resume, right? I want to see some things that maybe I don't know about you that I can't find from, like, you know, the internet stalking that I've gotten very good at from being a hiring manager. You know, and, like, that's where I look at for resume. It also kind of gives me an idea for, like, who you are. You know, do you have anything funny in your resume? Are you trying to catch my attention? Are you trying to do something like that? Or is it, you know, a very plain Jane basic resume? There's nothing wrong with plain Jane and basic. But ultimately, for me, I want to get you on a call. I want to talk to you. I want to spend some time learning who you are and ask you dumb questions like, you are now a piece of cheese. What kind of cheese are you and why? And because all it does is you're in, like, ready to kill mode, right? You're there, you're gonna kill this interview, and then you get asked a question that makes no valid sense for no valid reason. And we've now shifted this idea from, oh, it's hiring manager and potential, you know, future staff member, to, oh, it's just a couple of buddies talking, and a couple of buddies talking end up getting me things about people that maybe I didn't need to know, but helps me better understand who they are. I had somebody tell me that they had a cocaine problem. Yeah.
But you know what? Being upfront about it, it's huge.
But, like, we were just talking like real,
Yeah.
just like hanging out. I said, can you tell me something about you that isn't on your resume? He said, oh, I've been 9 months sober. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Getting, stopping drinking is really, really tough. He's like, I didn't have a drinking problem. I had a cocaine and pills problem. I'm like, oh, and he's like, shit. I'm like, yep. You know what you just said. And I think the next question I should have asked was, what 9 months, right? Is it been 9 months consecutive and you're still sober today? Or, how that looked. But I had to ask the question of, do you have a record? And he did. And the record, would not enable us to hire him. He would not be able to work on some of the projects that we have. So, and the guy was awesome. And it sucks because I was really ready, willing, and able to make him an offer. But sometimes it's just what happens. And without learning about that, I would have had to spend money to do a background check. I would have had to, and I would have probably found out the hard way, and it would have cost me more money. And like,
but you know what, we have students that like come in, they have records, and like, sometimes they're very upfront with us. Sometimes we find out through lab, and like they finally open up to us. And like, one of the things, like, I had a student that came in, he was like, I have a record, it's a federal record. And I said to him, I was like, okay. I was like, there's jobs out there for you. Yep. I was like, there's certain companies I can't help you place with because you're going to get, as soon as that comes back, with your background check, for instant, you're no longer eligible. I was like, but there's companies that really don't care.
And they'll pay really
they don't
well.
Have federal contracts, and they don't have like those types of environments where it matters to them. And they're just, again, looking at your skill sets. And that's a really important thing.
And I feel bad because it's literally because we do every now and then get a government job. And having someone on the staff that has and it was a possession with intent to sell. So like, this is not a small, like, if it's a possession charge, like that's one thing, right? Okay, you got caught with a couple of grams of weed. Whatever, right? My feelings on all of that are different, but this is a little bit different. You got caught with enough, possession with intent to sell. We do federal jobs that would invalidate the entire company from getting that job, and I can't put my company in that thing. So I gave him advice on what to do, because I believe a job interview is similar to an education thing where it's all about the Boy Scout mantra. You got to leave it in better condition than when you found it. And I feel like I'm going to call out another person that we interviewed, but it was an Eagle Scout, and that guy, one of the most nervous interviewers I've ever dealt with. Like, the guy could not get a word out sideways, just without clearly being very nervous. He had never interviewed for a job before. So I said, all right, I'm going to end this interview here.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you are not comfortable. I want to get to know you a little bit, and then let's reschedule you for 3 weeks from now. Right? And we just started talking as friends. I got to know him better. I asked a lot about Eagle. Because, like, for those that don't know, whatever you get rid of your predisposed notions of the Boy Scouts and some of the bad things they've done, getting to Eagle Scout is a non-trivial thing. I never made it, but it's a non-trivial thing, and it's a pretty big deal. It means you've done a bunch of things to get there. It shows dedication and that kind of thing. And like, I wanted to give this guy a chance, and I believe like part of my job is not just to be a maker. It's not just to be a business owner. It's to be an educator. And like, that's why when you and I met and we're talking about education, I'm like, dude, this is like what I want this YouTube channel to become, is all about like education with a little bit of entertainment mixed in there, right? Because as much as Veritasium does a great job at pure education, I would guess that Veritasium has a very, very low retention rate for people. Because the vast majority of people will get very bored by some of that hard science where like guys like you and I were like, we're gonna dig into the science. Hell yes.
Yeah. But like, I mean, one of the things that I always try and do is I try and be this type of like energetic person in class, because I want them, that's one of the ways that you keep students retained too, is like, talking and making jokes and stuff. We recently had a House of Rep member, Matt Cartwright, in our lab, and cool. I make like, what's up?
I said, that's cool.
Yeah. And he was touring the lab and we were talking and stuff because he helped get some money for our school for a project. And like, he's there and I'm giving him a tour of the lab and I'm, making jokes. Like one of my favorites is like to talk about the different materials that we use. I'm like, yeah, we use PLA, polylactic acid, and we use, some nylon. And I was like, we use PETG or polyethylene terephthalate with a glycol modifications. I'm like, rolls right off the tongue, right? And he just starts laughing immediately. And I'm like, this is how you keep people engaged. And then students go, wait, what'd you say? And then you break it down and then it opens up that door to be able to talk about more technical data.
Yep.
Because if you're just like, you stand in front of a class and it's that like Bueller.
Yeah, Ben Stein. Yeah, literally.
You've lost them from the get-go.
Yeah.
They walk into class, they're turned off, they're thinking about what they're going to eat for lunch. They're not thinking about, I want to skip lunch and I want to stay in lab.
Yeah, I totally get it. And like, everybody that has been inspired by an educator will never forget them. For me, it was John Winchester in high school. He inspired me to really push after, technology and education. The dude was a retired NASA aeronautical engineer, he was done. His life was done. He was bored, so he became a teacher. And he was like the teacher that rode a Harley. And because he didn't want to leave it in the rain, he just drove it into the classroom and parked it in the back of the classroom. When a few of us showed, interest in hybrid technology and electric vehicles. Now, I graduated high school in 2008. So I was a student of his in 2007 and 2008. So it was junior and senior year of high school. So 2007, this was before Tesla. Okay, so the original Roadster was out, but not the Model S or Model 3 for all you youngins out there. And so, like, we were really interested in hybrid technology. And, like, he got an actual hydrogen-powered car to come to campus after school. And we, like, created a club around learning all about this cool technology. And because of what he did, there ended up being a hydrogen fuel cell research facility locally put on by the local power plant so that we could all learn this stuff and they could write it off, right? Ultimately, they did it as a tax write-off. But, like, I got to drive in a hydrogen-powered Prius. And I know, driving in a Prius is not cool, but it was hydrogen-powered, and that was cool. Like, I wanted to learn about making a hybrid vehicle, so he bought a cat trike. It's a recumbent tricycle, so you lay down, it's comfortable as all sin. And we added a gas motor to it. Then we added an electric motor to it. And then the gas motor was eventually converted to run hydrogen because it's actually very easy to convert a carbureted motor to do that. He did not limit us for anything. Like, this was done very much. The school had very little idea of what we were doing. Many times the administration accused us of making drugs because we had a still that we were using to distill water incredibly pure so that we could make hydrogen. So we could, do the, what's the term? I was going to say hydrolysis. Is it hydrolysis? Yeah,
hydrolysis.
Okay, I was right. Okay. Yeah. To separate the hydrogen and oxygen molecules. And, the principal thought we were making cocaine. And I'm like, if anything, this would be alcohol. Right? If anything, we're making moonshine. Cocaine, you're not even close.
The program would have way more money coming in.
That's what we said too. They were not fond of us, and unfortunately, like most high schools, all the money went to the football team because, well, that's what gets them press. The kids that build electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles don't, and ultimately it meant that. A lot of us were spending money out of our own pockets. The teacher spent a lot of money. I know myself, my brother, and, of course, my family, because my brother and I did not have jobs. Mm-hmm. Well, not good jobs back then. I still don't have a good job. Jonathan actually has a nice government job with a pension. And he
What's that?
Yeah, right? And he loves it, and it's really awesome. I'm glad that he's finally found a job where he's like, I really like what I do, because he gets to make a difference. And I think a lot of us, we want to get paid. Don't get me wrong. Pay me a ton of money, and I'll sit at home and do nothing. But I think ultimately a lot of us just want to leave an impact on this world that is greater than who we are. And that's always been something that's motivated me to be an educator. But what's motivating you Cole, to be an educator? What's inspired you and motivated you to be an educator?
All my life I've been told that like I was really good at explaining things, breaking really complicated things down to simpler things, and I was like, okay, you know, that's obviously a very good skill to have when you're teaching.
Yep, for sure.
But like I have a passion for technology and design and art and making overall. So like like you think about, okay, I could probably make a lot of money in a private sector working for any number of companies that need someone who has vast fabrication skills, because I can work with metal, leather, plastics, all sorts of different stuff. I've done it all. I've poured glass. I've, done sand molds. I've done rubber molds. I've done all sorts of stuff.
That's the next thing I want to do is glass work.
Glass is a lot of fun, and I can put you in touch with some really good people.
We're going to do a local project that involves some glass work, and Amber doesn't know it yet, but I've negotiated the ability for them to teach us how to do it. And I'm like, it's going to be a really cool thing. It's going to be like a quasi date for us. I am so excited for this.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's military related, which is so cool. I am so excited for this project. Because like glass blowing is one of those arts. It's just oddly satisfying. It's incredibly dangerous. There is nothing safe about that.
But you know what? Like, what's really funny is like, I can show students glass blowing, and I can then show them like, okay, well, let's talk about 3 different things. MIT's glass 3D printer, so we can talk about that. We can also talk about how normal plastic extrusion has to deal with a lot of the same issues of gravity, melted material. How does it sagging? How do you keep it from sagging? How do you cool it where it doesn't shock and break too easily? Yep. How does it not delaminate? Things like that. And then the third thing is I can then show them like plastic blow molds, and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, same thought process. Yep. Same thought process. I'm taking a material, I'm making a tube out of it, then I'm blowing it into a space, letting it cool, being able to trim it before it cools too much, then letting it completely cool and recrystallize. And the thing is that like that's one of the things that does make me passionate about education is I can take all of these like different disciplines that I've become interested in, studied, or done, and then I can start weaving them together in a classroom and show students this, and then they go out and they become better than me. I don't want to make a mini me. I don't want to make someone who's got my level of knowledge. I want someone who's got my level of knowledge at a much younger age so that when they go out, they advance civilization, because that's how we do it. I don't try and hold anything back. I let students know when I don't know something, and I let students when they figure something out, like last year in the lab, I had a student who figured out how to do a servo program on Arduino in less code than I did, and it was way more efficient. And I was like, cool, take a screenshot, send it to me. I'm going to use that in the lab now to teach it, And we'll talk about that. You were the one that came up with that,
This happened to me in college. In physics, we were talking about how light is red shift or blue shift, depending on how it's coming at you or going away from you. Red shift is going away, blue shift is coming at you. And the way that I remembered it is now the way that it's taught by that professor. It's like a car with those stupid halogen, or with the stupid HID headlights because they're blue, right? So when it's coming at you, it's blue. When it's going away, it's red. And that's how I remembered it. And it's stupid simple, but it's way easier than like the actual technical way to remember it. And like ultimately to this day, I have never had a use for knowing that when light is going away from me at close speed of light, it's red. And when it's coming toward me, it's blue, but I still remember it. And so, I Johnson College specifically, and it's a very small college. It's very specific in what it does. So why did you choose Johnson specifically? Because, of course, there's tons of colleges out there. So why Johnson specifically?
So part of it came down to where I live. Okay. So I live in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is the upper northeast part of Pennsylvania. It's near the New York and New Jersey border. We can always do it on your hand if you think about like this is Erie and this is Philly.
Don't ask us to do that here in Florida.
Your hands don't make that kind of shape.
It's not the hand. It's a penis joke.
When I was in undergrad, I met my wife. Well, she was my girlfriend at the point. She was this girl I was interested in. She became my girlfriend. Now she's my wife. We've been living together for many years, happily married, with our puppy. And she was going to school to become a librarian, K through 12 librarian, and she wanted to focus on middle school. I still had a couple of years of school. Because I bounced around from school to school for a little while until I figured out what I wanted. But she was getting out and she was interviewing for jobs, and there was a job up in this region. And she said to me, she goes, "Should I take it?" And I said, "Absolutely." It was a dream job in a middle school in a district that was doing very, very well. She had a great offer. The only thing was she was going to be about 2 hours away from me. And I said to her, I was like, "Look, we'll make it work." And I said to her, "Look, I'm going to school for furniture design. I have fabrication skills." I was like, I can go anywhere in the world. There's no limitations. I could find a job. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
I knew I probably wanted a job in education, but I was like, hey, there's schools everywhere. We can make this work. So she got this job. I followed her. And then I found Johnson through a maker fair. So they did a maker fair, and we were driving to the grocery store and we saw a billboard for it. And I applied as a maker, and I started talking to people that worked there, and they started learning who I was and at the maker fair. And I got offered a job as an adjunct. And I did the 5-year adjunct gig thing. And I said to them, I was like, "Look, I like the school. I worked at a couple other colleges in the meantime. I was like, I really like this school. Right, I want to work here. How do we make this a full-time thing?" And they're like, "Well, we're launching this department, and we'd like you to be an adjunct for it to start and then maybe take over." And the rest was history. I took over my department basically. So
that's awesome. And like a college to find somebody like you, because for those that, if it's not evidently clear, Cole and I have talked previously. I didn't just have some random guy that I met in a 5-minute call on the Women in 3D Printing side. "Hey, you want to come on my podcast? You sound like a guy that's not gonna, say racial slurs on the podcast or something." Everything else is basically free game except racial slurs. But we actually had a call because we wanted to talk further about 3D printing in education, because we believe that there is this massive gap out there of people that understand the technology and those that actually want to use it. There's a ton of people that want to use it, and there's very few that actually understand it in a broad spectrum, of course. And we find that those that want to use it will end up buying it, utilizing it without the proper knowledge, having a crappy experience, and then all they ever do is complain. And if you say, "Well, that's not going to be me," how many times have you left a positive review at a restaurant or a business that you've worked with and it was really good, versus how many times have you left a bad review when it was really bad? The prosecution rests their case, ladies and gentlemen.
And you've never gone back.
Back. Yeah.
I had a student who was in my capstone because he was an EET major, and he passionate about 3D printing, super into it. He had promised us Ender 3, and I said to him, I'm like, "Bring it into the lab. We'll spend some time during my office hours, lab hours, and just let's fix it up. Let's do some stuff. Let me show you how to do some stuff on it." Yep. He's like, "Okay," and he did. We spent a wonderful afternoon printing out some mods for it, showing him how to dial it in, getting some things fixed, showing how to properly apply Gecko Tech to the build surface.
Nice.
Little things that there is no video for, or the videos suck, and they're hard to follow, especially weird camera angles, or someone who's not explaining Gecko Tech is thicker than a normal PEI sheet. So to me, it's easier to apply. And
PEI kind of sucks to apply.
What's up?
PEI kind of sucks to apply.
PEI is awful to apply, and I've seen way too many people do it with credit cards or things like that. It's go do yourself a favor, go get a cheap body scraper that's used for Bondo, and use that. Yep. You can get them real cheap. I don't know if you have Harbor Freight down there. We have Harbor Freight tools.
Everybody knows Harbor Freight. It's the place you go when you need the tool to work once.
Yeah, and you know what? You go and you buy a set of those, the little rubber scrapers, and they work forever because it's a simple piece that needs to be done. But you don't get any scratches or anything else, and you can do it a lot better. Also, sometimes it's better to buy something that's a little oversized and trim it down.
And I absolutely agree with that. We've got literally auto body Bondo spreader and
Yep.
scrapers because of PEI. Because, you know, the Taz 6 doesn't have a flex bed.
Nope.
So I'd say at least once a year, we're replacing the PEI on it because it bubbles up over time. But, you know, I will say, and I want to put it out there, I am still mad at Harbor Freight for removing those 20% off coupons. I just... Y'all took advantage of the damn pandemic to remove those coupons. I don't shop at you as much anymore because I don't get those coupons. But I will say your $20 reciprocating saw is probably one of the most abused tools that I have because I still have been unable to kill it. I remember when we used to live in Orlando, because I still have the same one from back then. My mom wanted to take a tree out of the yard.
Okay.
And we didn't have a chainsaw. I'm like, I'll be right back. And I grabbed an extension cord. I've got my big reciprocating saw. And they're so cheap. And we cut it down. So we cut the tree up with the reciprocating saw. But then we're trying to pull it out. We can't get it out. So we dig around it. We just take the recip saw. We stab it into the ground and just start cutting the roots.
Yeah.
This thing to this day still works. My buddy's dog chewed through the cord. So we just soldered on a new cord. It's fine. And the day that it dies, it will likely earn a place in the cabinet of shame because it is absolutely built in it. And it's like everyone complains about Harbor Freight tools, but they have like their hammer drill is very good. And a few of their tools are good. Now, if you're using it in industry, right? If you're someone that's drilling into masonry all the time, don't buy your drill from Harbor Freight. Go to Hilti, go to Milwaukee, go to somebody else.
Well, you know what? Like,
but for the home gamer, it's great.
They're good starter tools, just don't think they're going to get you through multiple jobs.
Exactly.
Like, I have a 7-inch grinder from them. It's 10 years old.
Got my 4.5-inch grinder from them.
I never fear about turning it on and it's not going to work. It's 7 years old, but it's a motor basically attached to
it's
thread,
a DC motor.
You know, like, yeah, it's not going to die unless I've done something really stupid to it.
It will likely die when the brushes fail because none of us have remembered the fact that they came with spare brushes and we don't know where we put them.
Yeah, I have no idea. Or like the little like spring fuses or things like that. Like, no.
And it's like, yes, buy once, cry once, or, you know, and I totally agree with this. Like, I've got a nice set of, funny enough, they're Huskies, from Home Depot because they've got the old school Craftsman warranty, which is if it breaks, bring it in and we'll swap it, right? Yeah. And that entire kit, it's like 270 pieces, was like $250. They went on sale for $100. I bought 3 of them. One for myself, one for my dad, and one for my brother. I had Christmas last year covered. It was great. Just had to get mom something, but I got the guys all a set of tools, and it's in a box. I leave it in the back of my car. Because I can't take it out at this point. I can't lift the toolbox out of the car now. But I leave it in the back of my car because I drive a 19-year-old car, and routinely I need socket sets. Hey, it's a Honda, okay? It's got another 20 years left in it. Sure. And it's the old original
Whatever you got to say
motors.
about the beige of automobiles.
Huh?
I always think of Honda as like the beige of automobiles. They're like just bland enough that they can't offend anyone.
It's true. Mine does have a white roof now. That is the recent thing that... So it's Florida, right? UV light, there's nothing you can do to stop it. And so the paint on the roof was starting to get rough. It wasn't peeling, but it was starting to fade. And yes, I could cut it down. I could respray it. $30, I bought 5 cans of white Plasti Dip. I taped off part of the car, and I just painted the roof with Plasti Dip. And I am surprised it has lasted this long. It is far from good, but good from far, and that's all that I need. You know, she's a 10-footer. There's not a panel on the car that doesn't have a scratch or a little door ding. Yesterday, Amber and I, Amber wanted to go to, Amber's the better 3/4. She wanted to go to Joann's because they're having a crazy good sale. I'm like, well, I haven't left the house in a week, so I guess I should probably leave the house. Haven't been outside in a week. And so we go to Joann's and we go out to eat. And the parking spots are so tight. I'm like, they're gonna end up dinging me. I'm like, oh, well, you may not even notice it. It's fine. Funny enough, neither car dinged me. I'm able to get out because my cane handle is made of TPU. So
Yeah.
I put the cane handle between my door and the car next to me. So it's soft, right? It's not going to hurt their paint. And that allows me and my dumb crippled ass to get out. So it worked out well. I like you, Cole, because I think you remind me so much of John Winchester in like just the kind of person that you are. And it's interesting because like I could see us getting together when all this stuff is over, having a beer, and just like talking about, it doesn't even gotta be about 3D printing, because like we're very much kind of on that same path. And I look at, because I struggle with this, and it's like maintaining that professional development, because like unless I want to go to Penn State or go to a school to get another degree, how do you maintain your professional development as an educator and as an individual?
Well, it's a hard thing to do a lot of times, because like I was just talking to my wife, because like I float back and forth between, do I want to get a PhD? Now, and then it's like, what do I get a PhD in? I'm not a pure engineer, so I don't want to go get an engineering PhD. I'm not a pure artist or anything, so it's like it's very difficult. Maybe do one of those build your own program type things. But like one of the things I was just talking to her about was like, I like to watch really in-depth TED Talks and then dive into more and more what those people are talking about. And then like let it like kind of like take me down that rabbit hole. Like we've all done the YouTube rabbit hole.
That's a dangerous hole to go down, my friend.
On the next video. Yeah, it's like those videos that load on the right and you just keep clicking, and then like, you know, you're like, holy crap, it's 4 a.m. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, and
I
like
guess you're going to sleep for 3 hours.
You now understand the special theory of relativity further than any known person should ever understand it. You're like, I don't know how I got here, but I'm not mad. And then now your YouTube recommendation feed is completely screwed for the next 3 months.
But you know what? Like, one of the things I love to do is like find conferences that are something that I'm just interested in, not necessarily something that I do. And just go to them. Like one of the conferences, ASME, which is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, they did a couple of free conferences over the pandemic, and one of them was 3D printing in healthcare. And it was so cool. Like this woman gave this amazing talk about like 3D printing hip joints and how they've created like a custom support that's like this really, really minimal like half-based support that just allows them to 3D print the hip upright and get so many of them onto the build plate at one time. But like she talks about that, and then she talked about like the lattice structure that they build inside, so calcium deposits can happen. It becomes your bone.
Yes,
and like all of these things are, and like you get to like see these conferences, and like, you know what? Hey, sometimes conferences feel expensive at $200-300. But you know what? That's really not bad. It's really, really not bad. It's going to be about the same price as a credit at a major college.
Yep.
You know, when you think about you have to take 3 credits to get to a normal class, you're now talking $1,200, $1,300, $1,400. A conference now all of a sudden makes a lot of sense. Go just hang out at it. Develop talk to people, do the networking thing. You know, it never has to be like, it's something that we teach students too, is that like, don't feel that because you are someone that's at the beginning of your career or know a little bit less, that they don't care to talk to you at a networking event. Right. Everyone's interested in talking to everyone. Otherwise, they wouldn't be at a networking event.
It's very true. And I need to do better.
Anyone.
I have to do better with all this, but like I'm a part of quite a few 3D printing groups, of women in 3D printing obviously being one of them. Because, of course, both you and I fit that group perfectly, but it's still fun to be able to support people. I'm part of the Build Volume group, which is, it's a drinking call for 3D printing. I don't drink, but everybody else does. And, like, I've been on the call with the CFO of Worth Additive, high up in X1. We had one of the lead design engineers from Kohler come on and talk about how they 3D print toilets, because if you all don't know, making a toilet is a ton of work. It is one of the most complicated molds made, because toilets are single piece. They are not two-piece molds. No, single freaking piece. And like we learned about the science, how toilets work. They showed us some cool toilet stuff. Last night I was on, and I should have sent this to you and I didn't. I forgot. I was on a call, and we had 2 people calling in from Starlink connections. I'm like, yeah. One of you was flexing. Now the other one is a SpaceX Ninja.
Oh.
Yep. So one of the guys on the call was a SpaceX Ninja. So he's worked for SpaceX for 8 years now, going on 9 years, and is responsible for the spacesuits that they use in SpaceX. Like,
that's awesome.
We're just a bunch of random people hanging out every Friday night. It's Matt Stoltz's call if you guys want to go check it out. Every Friday night, 9 to midnight Eastern time. Highly recommend it. We had 2 people calling him like, oh, one of them's like, oh, hey, I'm going to call him for my Starlink connection. And we get on there, and we're like, who's this guy? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm calling from California. I'm actually technically on Starlink. I'm like, we had one guy subtly flexing about Starlink. Now you're not cool anymore, other guy. We routinely have people calling from Sweden and from Australia. And these are all just makers from across the world.
Yeah.
We all get together, we hang out, and part of it is like you show off what you're doing. And, we were talking about the Ender 3 and like trying to make an Ender 3 print as good as a Prusa, because it is put on by Prusa's community manager, Matt Stoltz. And like, so I showed off, I can show these off, there's no NDA around these. These are GoPro housings that we're doing for the University of Florida, and it's for a deep water ROV, and it's chemically bonded to the GoPro case. PETG, methylene chloride is the chemical bonding agent. So we do these for them. And I was showing this off, and we were talking about, we've seen 3D printers in space. We've seen 3D printers upside down. We've seen printers in all these different things. But what we've never seen 3D printers do is print in a centrifuge, so under extreme gravity. So then we spent, I would say, no less than 20 minutes trying to figure out how jank we could build a centrifuge system to spin an Ender 3 to do like a 10 Gs is what we were thinking would be pretty good. 10 Gs, get it to print at a 10 G spin. And they're like, why don't you just have a Cardi come out with one of those things that you put the humans in and they stick you to the walls with centripetal force? And I'm like, no, see, that's just too easy. I want something that looks like at any moment in time, if one bolt came undone, it would end up in a low Earth orbit somewhere. I want it to look like when photonic induction took a brick and threw it into the washing machine and the whole thing went crazy. Then we got into, wait, what if we just used a washing machine? If we just balanced it appropriately, or a dryer, we balanced it appropriately, it would feasibly work because it would be as if it had zero force on it. Then we got into, all right, how fast they spin, how many Gs would that be? We went deep into the weeds of doing something incredibly dangerous for my YouTube channel.
Well, I'm going to say, if you want a sponsor, I'm sure I could have our students build that for you, that rig.
I do, but how would we get it from, you guys are in Pennsylvania, all the way to freaking Tampa?
We can make that happen.
Because, like, it needs to be a Florida, this is a Florida man video all day long.
Absolutely.
They're like, you live in Florida. Just start driving around. You'll find a dryer or a washer on the side of the road. Keep a 6-pack of beer on you. So whoever's got it out, give them the beer, have them load it into the back of a truck for you, and then next call, we're going to figure it out.
I'm thinking, no, you need to build a rig that's similar to like what NASA test pilots.
That's what I'm thinking, right?
I think you need like something like that. You know what? Like I did centrifugal jewelry casting before.
Yeah.
And like we can make a rig like that we can bolt an Ender 3.2 and just have it printing. We can make this happen.
This is not a dumb idea, right?
I think this is a fantastic idea.
Okay, it's a dumb idea, but it's gonna. Think of the video. Like, there's like 4 videos here, right? We have the initial idea and like the, oh my god, this is so stupid, I love it. Then the actual, like, the design montage, the build montage, the students talking about this thing is going to rip itself apart. We have a scientist come in and say this thing has a safety factor of 1.01. Then it's the shipping montage, which is just like a time-lapse camera.
I mean, I'm thinking like putting it on like the back of a flatbed truck and like driving it down to Florida and just like having like little GoPro set up so you could just get the people's passing like views.
Yes.
Oh my god, it would be great to have like a white tarp over it, making it look like a UFO that's being moved.
It's gonna look like a UFO being moved.
We could do this, man. We could do this. If you get the sponsorship lined up, let's make this happen. Like,
and it's funny because Disney has a centrifuge, so they have one that you put people in for their destination space ride. But like, if you want to do anything with Disney, the answer is no. You could go film at Disney all day long. They do not care because it's free press. What you can't do is get their approval for this kind of stuff. They will never let you do it. And I'm like, all right, how can I fit a 3D printer into a backpack that I can somehow get onto the ride, that I can assemble before the ride starts? But I don't, that definitely doesn't go to 10 Gs. I want to go to 10 Gs. I think that goes to like 3 or 4 Gs.
We can do it. We teach motor controls, industrial motor controls.
Oh, I know that we can do it.
We can do this.
But then, of course, you have the other problem of, what the sin do you do with it when you're done? Like, I've got 2 acres of land. We can set this up and have an actually, like, decent level of safety.
But to be honest, you could use it as a casting machine after it's done.
But it's huge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could work with some people and figure out how small we can get it. With the right accelerations, we can make that happen at a relatively small.
You absolutely could. I don't want it to end up like that tower crane in Canada, right, where the counterweight isn't right and the whole damn. Because like I'm imagining the video where you've got like a bunch of GoPros in big dive housings, nicer than this. And it's just whipping around, and all of a sudden, it just starts to get unbalanced, and it just, boom! The whole thing just disintegrates, right?
I'm telling you, man, we could do this. I'll make the phone calls today to get the people lined up to help out.
It's Saturday, but you know what? Screw it.
We'll talk about this. We'll do this.
This is such a shitty idea. I want to do it so bad.
No, it is not a shitty idea. I think this is a fantastic idea that needs to happen.
This is a viral video right here. And you know what?
You know what? Also, like Elon Musk, speaking about SpaceX, he launched a Roadster into space. Why don't we launch a 3D printer into space and just let it just be hovering out there?
They already did that. There's already a 3D printer on the ISS. It's done. It's not.
Yeah, but it's not orbiting like another planet. Like it's our planet.
I guess the difference is that you and I don't have a level of FU money where we can literally have a marketing effort be to put one of our own cars on top of our biggest rocket ship that we've ever made, send the stupid thing into space, and also FAA.
I guess, what are we doing with our lives that we don't have that kind of money?
Allison is saying, how hilarious, do it.
See?
Now, I've already promised everyone that at 2,000 subscribers, we're going to do a bubble machine. I had a diatribe on a previous podcast where I talked about the bubble machine that we built. Like, we 3D printed a big bubble machine. And I had approval from we had a retail shop back then in a mall. I had approval from them to do it. We did it. We set it up, and it was so good. They pulled our approval, and I was so mad. I yeeted that thing into a trash can. I broke every single part of it because I was just so freaking pissed off. And I, for some reason, said that at 2,000 subscribers, I'm going to build the stupid bubble machine. So I say this is like a big subscriber milestone, because this is like a 3-month project to do it right.
What do you think, 5,000 or 10,000 subscribers?
Dude, if we could get 10,000 subs in 3 months, that'd be pretty
dope. You hear that,
dope.
people? 10,000. That's what you need to do.
10,000 subs. Damn it.
That means share it, like it, make it go viral, put it on Reddit. Like, come on,
Florida man. Florida man employs Johnson College to build one of the most dangerous 3D printing contraptions ever made. Let's go in and see how it's doing.
This is just a headline that we want to see happen, because this isn't just a headline in Florida to happen. It would be in Pennsylvania. Think about the news reports. Come on, people. You know what? If you think about it, like all the bad stuff that's happened in the last year, now that we're talking about the Delta variant being awful and everything else.
Oh, don't even ask Amber what their numbers are right now. Good Lord have mercy.
Let's make something really freaking awesome happen in our community outside of just printing face shields and things like that.
This is not awesome.
I mean, that's wonderful itself, but like...
This is borderline incredibly dangerous, and if nothing else, a stupid good time.
What's the worst thing that can happen?
The damn thing screws off into a low Earth orbit, and someone gets their shins taken out, and they end up looking like Cotton Hill because of a 3D printer accident. Like, and it's funny because I've got the perfect space to do this. The side of my house, there's maybe 75 feet of grass before a fence, and I've got a ground rod that I have an 8-foot ground rod for Tesla coils, because when you live on land, you build Tesla coils.
Absolutely.
But the house is block. So, like, if we had a long enough cord to do it, we could all stand behind the house, and the house would be your protection. And we just spin this stupid... But God, I hope my father isn't listening to this. Or my mom.
But you know what? Like,
my dad would be there. My mother would be nowhere near this. My dad would be the one that wants to press the button to start it. My mom would want to be nowhere near this.
I'm totally game for that. Let me ask you this. Do you think we could get a Guinness record for it?
Well, there isn't a record already, so...
Yeah, but University of Maine had a record for 3D printing that wasn't a record before. No one talked about what the biggest 3D printed boat was before they dipped it.
I'd be down. What the hell?
The fastest spinning 3D printer in the world.
We've got
the fastest moving 3D
printing, or I guess 3D printing in the highest G or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I can say, I'm Grant, so G thing. I don't know. I could make a Sugar Hill Gang joke, MASTERG with the double E. But that's...
Well, I mean, we could even 3D print a little rocket off it, and then, if the rocket doesn't just, disembark.
Well, see, that we have to get FAA approval for, and I believe I am close, and there's a municipal airport close, and I believe we are within 5 miles of the crow flies. They don't have an ATC, not ATC, they don't have a tower.
Okay.
So it's a real municipal airport. So we should be okay, but, to launch a rocket like that, you need... crazy FAA clearance, or you will go to federal prison. Do not pass go, you're going to prison.
Print a little model rocket on it, and that doesn't just from the centrifugal force and everything, if that doesn't release, I mean, that would be a really cool print to have off of this thing.
Could we actually power it with we could have a motor on it, but could we have it like a JATO, like a Genesis takeoff, so it's rocket engines that get it started to spin?
Oh, I'm all for it.
Anytime that we can add something with fire, that's an extra 2,000 views right there on the video.
It's a rocket assist to help you out to get up to the G-force and the RPMs needed to sustain that motor. It's all you're doing is you're taking load off the start of the motor.
Cole, this is such a stupid idea. I am in. Let's do this. I don't care.
I think this is a great idea.
And see, I have a question here, what is your teaching style? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I don't think we need to ask that at this point. I'm fairly certain that has, pretty much been clear here. He is willing to support any idea, assuming that it has some monicum of education in it.
Yeah, you know what the thing is that you learn by doing. That's a big thing that we talk about at school. We have the hashtag WeWork. It's the idea of the school. I think that, embodying that is a great thing. Making things happen in the lab. We built a giant 3D printer because I had students that sat there and they said to me, they're like, look, we have these 3D printers. The TAS-6 was the biggest one we had at the time. They're like, that's great and all. They're like, we want to print big parts. And I'm like, well, how big? And they're like, let's print 1,200 millimeters in every direction. And I said, let's do it. But you guys got to design it and build it. And they started it. And it was a 4-year project. But we finally got parts off the printer after 4 years.
I'm sending a message to everyone on the Friday call, letting them know that I have an educator from Johnson College willing to help in making this Ender 3 or any printer, because it's going to fit whatever printer we want, inside of a centrifuge, a thing.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm all for it. Hey, I've got an entire lab that has machining tech. We can make all the custom parts we need.
This idea is so stupid. I am so excited for this.
Is it stupid or is it genius? I think it falls into genius category.
Honestly, it is a very, very fine line. But everyone said the same thing about, SpaceX. Where does this fall under genius or stupid? And ultimately, SpaceX has been one of the most successful rocket launch platforms ever. The Falcon system has been one of the most successful. And you know what? We have a
rocket to send a billionaire up in.
It's true, and we have a Musketeer, M-U-S-K in caps, Musketeer tier in our Patreon, which of course is $420.69 a month. So if I gotta convince Elon Musk to actually do that, if he can pay us $420.69 a month, because that's come on, that's great. But if we can do that, if we can get Elon to be on board for this and put a SpaceX sticker or some stupid shit on it.
That's what I'm saying, man. Sponsorship.
God, this idea is terrible.
This is fantastic.
Allison says, aren't all geniuses slightly insane anyhow?
Absolutely.
During their time, I think it's when a lot of geniuses are dead and when they're no longer, like, actively doing stuff, that's when we realize how smart they are, in my opinion. It's mostly for the artists, right, where they're, you know, shunned and hated when they're alive, but all of a sudden something is discovered when they're dead, and they become, you know, incredibly famous.
I mean, Van Gogh, if his brother didn't support him, you know, he would have been a pauper completely. Probably would have died in the street.
And so, this just leads into a great question for you. Like, how do you push students that don't have the motivation to succeed? Because I'm over here saying, boy, there are a lot of things that go wrong, and, like, I don't have insurance for this kind of stuff, and I feel like I'm gonna have to, like, rent a plot of land because I don't think the homeowner's insurance here is gonna be too fond of
event insurance is not nearly as expensive as you think it is. Like,
it
$1 million event
isn't,
insurance.
but, like, event insurance that involves maiming, I feel like might be a little bit more expensive.
But yeah, to get students interested, like, generally one of the things that helps to start off is, like, when they come to open houses and things like that, if they're early enough, we do what's called a shadow program. I don't know other schools that really do these types of things where, like, they can come and hang out in a class with us for the day. I am a huge fan of shadow days. If they're early enough where it's not like, you know, like right now, if a student applied for the fall, there's no way we could do a shadow day because there's no classes going on.
Right.
But
right.
If, like, let's say in the fall you're interested in next year and you want to do like a shadow day, we get you to do those. That tells us whether or not you're interested. I've had students walk out of the class after 15 minutes of being a shadow being like, look, I'm not interested. And I'm like, cool. Then you have students that are like,
but
they hang out the entire day. You know, they tried before they buy. They took the car for the test drive, you know? But then you get students that, like, generally the students that are in our classes are students that are really interested in being there. And that's not hard to motivate them. Sometimes it's hard to keep them motivated, though, you know? And students that are waning in motivation, you just gotta have that conversation with them. Like, what's going on? Like, is it because you're working third shift and you're exhausted? Do you need an extra 10 minutes before class starts? I mean, I have a student that right now, awesome family man, awesome guy in the lab, but he works Friday, Saturday, Sunday all day so he can have Monday through Thursday classes. That is a rough gig when you have a small child at home, a wife, family obligations. It's a rough gig just to have a small child at home, man, without a job. Yeah, that is a rough set of obligations. But you know what? Like, one of the things that I find that's really great is I found out he was a gamer. And he was a console gamer. And we talk about it. And he shows me what's going on. And I learn more about console gaming from him. So the last console game that I really played was in Dreamcast. So,
hell yeah!
You know, like, Dreamcast. I was a regular Rumble fan and Hydro Thunder.
Yes,
like
sir. Hydro Thunder!
Yeah. So, like, for me, it's like I play a lot of PC games. But, like, so, like, we get to talk about it. And, like, we talked about, like, you know, PS4 and him trying to get one and, like, dealing with the bots and all that stuff. And it keeps him engaged on a different level. You know?
This is education, man. This is what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Education does not stop at the freaking classroom. It doesn't. It doesn't start and stop at the classroom. This is why I encourage people, unless you for some reason have a crazy killer deal to go to a state school, go to a smaller school where you can work with educators like Cole. Like, this is amazing. I can tell you the names of every single one of my professors in college that I had a connection with because they gave a damn. And there's a big difference between someone that's a good educator and someone that gives a shit. It's a huge difference.
I was in a very small program when I was at Kutztown, which is a state Pennsylvania school.
Yeah.
But, like, I was in a small program. I knew all my professors. We all were on a first name basis. And you know, like, one of the things that I try and teach students is, like, look, at a normal school, you have 4 years to go from being a student to being a colleague.
Yep.
Okay? This is the best advice. This is one of the best pieces of advice I can give you about college. But, like, at a 2-year school, that job is a lot harder because you now have 2 years to go from being someone I see as a student to someone that I see that I want to work with at the end. The recommendations go to students that I would work with, you know? And you know what? one of the things I will also say is if you want to go into an industry that you need recommendations for, okay, guess what? 2-year schools are really great, and small programs at small 4-year schools are really great because I get to know you and I can write a great recommendation. That student I was just talking about, I can write him several page recommendation very easily, you know, and it would read beautifully because I know him. I'm able to talk about work that I've done in the lab with him.
There's rapport.
Yes. And I can tell you point blank, I have a lot of students I would just hang out with and grab lunch with. You know, I have no problem where, like, if I need to make a trip to Home Depot or Lowe's to grab something that we need in the lab, I've got no problem taking a student with me because I know that they're good people and, like, I can hang out with them and do things. And, like, then I can also show them, like, other things in the shopping place, you know? Like, we had this really funny experience at the end of last semester. We needed a really long M3 bolt. Home Depot and Lowe's do not carry 25 millimeter long M3 bolts.
They do not.
It's not going to happen. But we went around looking for one. So the student's like, well, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to make one. He goes, what do you mean we're going to make one? I picked up a set of roofing nails that were about the right length.
Tap it.
And I said, we're going to go back and we're going to make one. And he's like, what are you talking about? So we put it in the vise. We take the die, the appropriate size. We run it along. We make the threads. We cut off the tip. We round it over a little bit with a chamfer. And then I flip it over in the vise in a pair of soft jaws. And I start taking a triangular file, and I cut a flat edge into it. So we could put a flathead screwdriver in. And he's like, I can't believe you just made a screw. And I say, yeah, and now you do it too. And then he made one. And then there was another instructor in the room. And he's like, well, I want to make one now. And I showed him, and I was like, guess what? This is the evolution of going from nails to screws. This is how we did it as a civilization.
Literally how we did it. Yep.
You know, like you would have a blacksmith that would start off by turning it and making something that could actually twist in. And then you start to develop threads. I mean, this is evolution. This is tool evolution. And we got to have that conversation because we needed something so specific that we couldn't get, that we just made, you know?
And this is where my passion for clocks comes in heavily. I'm not going to say classically trained, but I've been trained by someone who is a master horologist, which
that's awesome.
It's a clockmaker. It is not anyways, it's not a pimp. Let me see. I don't know if I can pick it up, but let me see if I can pick it up. It's quite heavy. Let me see if I can grab it. Oh, yep, I got it. Okay, I don't have to bend my back too much. This is my pride and joy. It's on the floor because it needs to be repaired.
That's beautiful.
This is a 1956 jeweled and Sonia crystal regulator. It is glass and brass. It weighs about 8-9 pounds. You can see the entire mechanism, and it's jeweled. So the escapement, which as I move, you can see it moving back and forth. It rocks back and forth. That has got 2 natural rubies on it.
Wonderful.
And those rubies basically reduce your friction. And this thing is worth more money than I care to admit. It's worth a lot of money.
Old school bearings.
What?
They were old school bearings.
There are no bearings in this.
No, but I'm saying the rubies acted as bearings.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's got actual bushings. So it's got bushings and, like, I had to learn how to rebush a clock, which is you literally drill out the old one. You use a reamer to ream it out to just under size. Use a special press to press it in. I learned all about lubricity and certain oils and different things like that. And I have worked on clocks from the 1500s. And you get to see all the blacksmith hammer marks. And if you want to look them up, Cole, the business is called Boyd Clocks, B-O-Y-D Clocks.
Okay, yeah.
They've been around for 75 years. The owners, let me give you like an idea of this place, right? I'm going to show you my first ticket because I have it here because it was something that I'm never going to forget. It's attached to my computer. This is my first ticket. Oh, that shows my personal cell phone number. Well, oh well. Oh well, and my address, but that's public. Whatever. If you email me, you get my personal cell phone number. It says going to rebuild himself, 4/5 of 2018. So cool. If you're on YouTube and you can screenshot that, you just got my personal cell phone number. I really don't.
I'm sure you'd give it to me anyway.
Well, I've emailed you. It's in my signature. You have it.
Oh. Well,
but no, remember this is a live video, so there's no editing that out. Although I guess I could edit it out in post. But the people that are, Allison has it, but Allison's in the UK. I don't have to worry about Allison. blowing up my phone in the middle of the night. But either way, I walked in there with a clock that I found at a Goodwill. It was ticking. I'm like, oh, it's either a bomb or it's a clock. I'm curious to find out which one it is. It was a clock. And I'm like, oh, it's a mantle clock. It was in rough shape. And I brought it in. And I'm just in there. I'm talking with people. And a guy sticks out. He's like, I think I know you. I'm like, oh, shit. What did I do? What did I say? What did I do wrong? He's like, this is going to be a weird question, but do you dance? I'm like, I don't know if I should answer that question. Why? He's like, because I'm pretty sure I know. He's like, what kind of dance do you do if you dance? I said, I do swing and salsa and jazz dancing. He's like, okay. Do you dance with the torpedo? I'm like, yes. He's like, that's where I know you from. I'm also a dancer. My name is Mark Ingram. He's like, don't pay these people. Come in the back. Let me show you how to do it yourself.
That's awesome.
And that's how it started. And, like, I've got my own little station there, which, of course, because of my back injury, I don't go there very often right now, and, of course, the pandemic and all that. But, like, this is the kind of shop that at 5:01, the doors are locked, they're in the back, the music is at an 11, and there's a billiards table in the back that's been, like, perfectly leveled, so they're all shooting pool. The owner has a convertible GTO 68, 69, 4 on the floor, the way you'd want it. And he does dumb hot boy shit in that car, but, that's his pride and joy. His main vehicle that he drives is a clapped-out van that, when it eventually dies, it gets left on the side of the road, and he goes and buys another vehicle for $1,000 or less and does no maintenance to it until it dies, because it's cheaper for him. He's a gentleman that has found every way to make his life more efficient and is one of the most, I won't say disorganized, but it's chaos. But, like, the wives of the people that work there and some of the ladies that work there, everyone gets together. Maria, she will cook lunch and dinner for everybody if she's there.
That's awesome.
Every year we do Thanksgiving. They rent out a pavilion at one of the local parks. Everyone gets together. There's like 60 or 70 people. Everybody brings something. My family went to it. I'm so thankful that I was able to bring my mom, my dad to it 2 years ago before everything happened. And we met, that's how my parents met Amber's parents, which was pretty cool. And it was a completely different Thanksgiving where it was just like everyone got together. We're all just thankful for what we got. And like, these are the people that they're my second family. And anytime I'm down there, I pop in and it's just like nothing changed, right? I get to look around. I'll see what's, what new stuff is in there. And I get to learn something every single time. And that ticket was written by one of the late great, what was it? LeCultre Atmos clock workers.
Oh, wow.
And if you know the Atmos clock, it is full of some specific gas, and it there's a diaphragm, and the diaphragm, because the gas is something special, it expands and contracts heavily with very small temperature changes. And the Atmos clock will never need to be wound, assuming it has temperature swings of 2 degrees per day.
Wow.
So, like, if your house is at 70 and it goes to 72 and then back down to 70, that's enough to keep it running. They've had one running for 38 years.
That's
and
incredible.
This gentleman taught me some basic stuff before he passed. He died about 1.5, 2 years ago. He died in February of 2020, I think. No. Yes. Yeah, it was like January, February 2020 is when he passed.
Wow.
His name was Jerry. And he was one of the late great Atmos workers. And now, like, I can try to continue that legacy of somebody who can work on these clocks, because they're, like, they don't exist anymore, right? LeCultre makes them, but people that work on them don't exist, right? The clock industry is dying. People are literally dying, and their businesses are closing because they're dying. And this is old school engineering, and I have brought so many people. I used to do business meetings there because a lot of people that work with us are in Tampa. They're in Tampa. I am not in Tampa, so it was like my office away from my office. And I kid you not, half of the meetings that I would have in that place would just be all about, like, talking about the clocks and showing them the clocks, because everyone thinks it's cool. They'll reminisce about the one their dad had or their grandpa had, and it's so cool to see that a clock shop during a pandemic thrived.
Well, see, and you know what? Like, talking about the idea of, like, dying knowledge.
Yep.
that was like one of the things, like when I was in high school, I started doing, and we talked about this briefly the other day, was I started doing medieval combat reenactment. Yep. And I really wanted armor. And one of the things that happened was, you know, if you contact people that make metal armor, if you've ever done that, it's very expensive. Yep. And, you know, like that's why like chainmail and leather armor is a lot more prevalent because it's a lot easier to manufacture.
Yep.
And so I got into making armor from that because I wanted full plate. I wanted metal armor. So the thing is that there's no school for that. There's no class you can take anywhere that's like, here's how you make, you know, a helmet.
You have to literally find somebody that's making it or has made it and knows what they're doing and train under them.
So one of the things that I did was I started off by watching body shop guys, like the old school 60, 70-year-old guys who were like, you know, using body shop hammers and planishing and doing all that to curve old panels for like 30s through 50s cars, to get an idea of how do you curve metal in multiple axes at the same time. And then what I did was I started, you know, researching like old manuscripts for blacksmiths used to write back in the 12 and 1300s and stuff like that, and finding old books that are out of print at old shops. Or, you know, one of the places that I love going is like Abe's Books online. I don't know if you've ever searched through them.
Yep.
They have a lot of old out of print stuff. But like, yeah, I was pretty much completely self-taught as a blacksmith for a while. And I had an armor business prior to the recession that happened in the early 2000s. I had a pretty thriving business where I was making armor for reenactments, for theater companies, things like that, and armor for myself that I could just go and fight in. But like, it was old school tricks and knowledge that like just don't exist anymore. And then it was really funny because my students know about this type of stuff. I'm very open about it, my history of fabrication and metalwork and all that.
Yeah, I mean,
and I had
fits your role.
Yeah. I had a student who sent me a video of Jesse James putting rivets in a chair to actually make like a racing seat.
Yep.
And he sends me this video, and I said to him, I was like, "You want to learn how to do it?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Do you want to learn how to put rivets together?" And he goes, "Sure." And so the next day in the lab, I literally took a rod and I showed my students how to make a rivet straight up. All they're using was a ball peen hammer, a hacksaw, and a file, and a vise.
I've got all of those things.
I could teach you how to make a rivet from scratch.
That's so
like
cool.
So we started doing that. I showed them how to do a rivet, and then I said to them, I was like, "You want to learn how to make a rivet that disappears?" And they're like, "What do you mean a rivet that disappears? Like, is this some kind of carnival trick?" And I said, "No. So put a chamfer on the hole now, so you have like kind of this countersink. Yep. And then once we hammer the rivet metal into it, we're gonna file it smooth off." They're like, "Okay." So we file it smooth after that, and the metal doesn't fall apart because there's that countersink space for the metal to be, and it's completely smooth now. And they're like, "Whoa!"
And that whoa moment is it's there is at least one person there. It's like, bing, the light bulb is on. They have decided what they're doing with the rest of their lives right then and there. Like, that's why I want to be a teacher, and this is why like the YouTube channel is like the perfect thing for me. Because if people are disrespectful to me, I can remove the comments and block them from the channel. In school, if I call them, in college, you can call someone a little shit and get away with it, but you can't do that in like high school, where I think realistically a lot of those, you know, those light bulbs, that's a high school thing, right? A lot of them get those light bulbs in high school, but they're, you know, the power is turned up to 11 in college. But the people that you're dealing with a lot of times are people that are looking to go into these blue collar jobs, so they may not have had the greatest high school experience, or maybe they're doing a massive career shift.
I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the student who says like, "Well, I suck at math," and I'm like, "Why do you suck at math?" And they're like, "Well, I didn't do very well in college.
I had a shitty teacher."
And I'm like, "Well, was it because you didn't like the experience, or is it because you actually couldn't do the work?" And they're like, "Well, I didn't like the experience." And I'm like, "Okay, well then do math with me, because like, you know, we're not doing the, you know, the train in Switzerland is going 650 kilometers per hour. What time does the pizza get delivered in Chicago? Type math problems. That doesn't exist in a lab. I give you a math problem that is answerable, makes sense, and is repeatable, and also it's like something that like is so hands-on, it's almost stupid if you can't get it. You know, it's got like, I go, okay, well, if something measures 55 millimeters and you need to find the center point of it, how do you do that? You know, and like I teach them like quick mental math tricks. Like I teach them like why standard measurement sucks over metric. You know,
It
like
does.
they go,
Metric is the best.
I hate fractions. I go, well, there's no fractions in metric unless you're talking about ratios.
Yep.
And even then, it's not even posed as a fraction. And so like I'll go like, what's half of 13/16? And they go, and I go 13/32. And they go, how'd you do that? And I said, I'll show you on the board and I'll show you the mental math trick. You know? And then they go, oh, well, what would that be good used for? And I say, well, if you want to find the center of something. And they're like, whoa.
That to me is what makes teaching worth all the extra bullshit, all the political things that you have to go through at colleges. And Allison said it best, learning through doing. And it's such a shame because we are taking away this aspect in school where shop class isn't a thing, home ec isn't a thing, learning to balance a freaking checkbook isn't a thing. And like, I suck at accounting. I have an accountant, right? And that's the easiest money I spend every month because when 3-letter organizations come knocking and they want to do audits, here's my accountant. It's his problem now. And yes, I have to pay him a non-trivial amount of money, but I don't got to deal with it. And I know that, like, I'm not going to make some egregious mistake. But learning by doing solves a lot of that. And, like, I think it was Veritasium that did the video on are you a visual learner or are you an auditory learner?
I just watched that recently.
It's a great video. If you guys haven't seen it, honestly, if you're watching our channel and you're not watching Derek's channel, which is Veritasium, Veritasium is our channel, but is better at editing, better at talking, better at script writing. He's got 10 million subscribers, all right? So he's just better in all the ways. But he doesn't talk about 3D printing. At least not yet. But like he just did that big thought experiment with the car to go faster than the speed of the wind.
Yeah.
And like the dude won, was it 10 grand off
10
of it?
grand, yeah.
And he's now putting it back into the community as a whole like this guy is awesome, and he employed other YouTubers to actually build models of it. I don't have a treadmill. Clearly I am overweight and I have a bad back, so I don't have a treadmill. But like it's just so cool to see what other people are doing, and his channel is awesome. He did a whole thing on the YouTube algorithm and talked about how it works, and it is one of my favorite ones. Allison asked if he is amusing. I don't know. If you like very technical stuff, he is. Yeah. I think I bet if you watched his videos raw and unedited, you would fall asleep. But his editing is done very well, where he mixes a lot of these action shots of doing with the hardcore math and science behind it.
Yeah, like I recently watched the video about like are you a visual learner versus a written and reading learner and stuff like that, and it really does support a lot of the view of like how I've been teaching the last so many years, where it's like I hated the idea of like in a class where like let's say you were in a math class or a science class, teacher only explains it one way and that's it. If you don't get it, it's your fault. You know?
And that sucks.
I always hated that.
Yep.
I tell students from the get-go, I'm like, look, if you don't get something, tell me, because there's 30 other different ways that we can come up with to teach you something.
Yep.
You know? There's always a different method. There's always a different parable. There's a different way of going at things. Let's talk about it. But you know what? Like, one of the things that I do a lot of times is, like, I'll have, like, a PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll have, like, videos to go along with it. And his view of, or his research is showing that the most different types of media you can employ, the better the students learn. And I've always employed that, and it was always something really good because I always felt that instinctively, I felt that actually helped.
Right.
You know? Because even if, let's say, you think yourself as a visual learner, you reading something, that's still visual. You know, like, I don't get the differentiation that people make sometimes because, like, language is visual. Just like, you know, a diagram is visual, but a diagram usually has some kind of language in it. So then the reading and writing people have something, you know, like everything should have different ways of going about it. And like, you know, usually your biggest problem as an educator is actually getting over the technical jargon.
It's true.
That I think is really the biggest hurdle. You know, teaching a student, like, how do you understand the words that I'm using? You know, because like a lot of people can say like, oh, look at the motion system of the process that's happening behind you. But then if you go to an engineering class, they're going to say it's a kinematic system. Well, what does kinematic actually mean? It just means motion system.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And so it's just a technical term that we're using for it. So like, I always employ kind of what I like to think of as like the drama method in TV shows. And I get a lot of laughing from this, but like, if you ever watch like a hospital drama or a Law and Order or something like that, what do? They say it might be lupus, then they explain what lupus is, and then the rest of the episode they just use lupus now, right? Because they've done it, they've explained it, then they're using the technical term. You know, oh, they need a CT scan, it's a CAT scan, it's this, it does that, you know, and then they go on to use the term. I do the same thing in my class where I use the term, I explain what the term is, and then I go along the rest of the class using that term.
Right.
And so it becomes more of a casual conversation thing. And then I find my students are using the technical terms because it's used in casual conversation. It's not them reading it out of a textbook, and that's the only source they have for it, which they might not even be able to pronounce it properly because they read it out of the textbook. They need to learn how to use these things. We're very big on soft skills at the school, which are the skills of how you talk to people. You know, how do you write something up so a person can understand it? Things like that. So like all these things go hand in hand, and like Veritasium, I think, does a very good job of doing that.
He does.
You know, he explains it in multiple ways. He, you know, you'll see like one of the great videos that I recently watched was Metric Time. I don't know if you got to see that video.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Why there's not a metric time, but they're actually having attempts, and like then he goes on like, what's the history of the metric system? You know. And that's really interesting. And that's something that's not explained.
Veritasium is one of those channels that has grown specifically because of YouTube rabbit holes. Because, like,
he's great. Though. If you're borderline ready to pass out and you want something that's going to occupy your brain and then you're going to remember for the rest of your life, you watch his videos. Because it was a trick I learned really when I was in undergrad, which is if you're studying for something the next day, like a test the next day, the best thing you can do is you read it right before you go to bed, and then you go to bed. You don't put on music, you don't put on comedy, you don't put on anything.
It's the last thing in your mind.
Straight to bed. It's the last thing. Your brain cycles through it over and over again while you're sleeping. You'll have a better chance of remembering it.
Memory was always a tough thing for me. To this day, it still is a tough thing for me. That is where I always failed as a student. But, you know, I made it through so other people can too, damn it.
Hey, you know what? Like, I always tell students, I'm like, look, if someone else has done something that you're training to do and you don't think you can do it, just look at the fact that there's other people that are doing it that are much stupider than you. You know?
Allison put a good point in the comments here. She said, totally agree. And I would say that younger people struggle with research and talking to others because they only know how to rely on the internet. And you know what? I'm even finding myself going back to this because, like, for the last year and a half, I've been a hermit and I'm not out there. I'm not talking to people. And yeah, my phone rings every now and then, and it's getting better now that we have actual marketing that we're paying for. But, you know, ultimately, I have to remember how to communicate with people. And it's funny because I almost never get phone calls unless I'm on staff calls for whatever reason. And so what I've started doing is I'll put my phone on speaker, so that they're not only hearing how I'm responding, but they're hearing what I'm being asked. And, like, a few of them are like, you just really don't give a shit, do you? I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to take that as a compliment or not, but no, I really don't. Because ultimately, my job is to spend as little time as possible with somebody, figure out, can we help them or can we not? And if we can't, if they need some sort of education, get it to them and get them out of here. Because if we can't help them, they're wasting my time.
Honestly, that's a lot of education in general wrapped up. I have a very limited amount of time with a student. I have to figure out what they know, what they don't know. How do I get them what they don't know? And then how do I get them out the door so they can make a living and be in a career path, you know? And having the family and doing all the living stuff, you know? And it's hard.
I'm excited for when I'm going to go back into sales. But to do that, I got to have the back fixed and all that. And so we are actually hiring salespeople. So I think that's the salespeople and CAD. I need some more CAD people, but I tell people we are always hiring, hiring, because you, no matter who you are, whether it's Cole, whether it's Allison, whether it's somebody else, I don't care. You have a purpose, and if you think your purpose is working with 3D Musketeers, do not hesitate to reach out. Our community manager that we have now did not start with us as a community manager. She came on as a social media marketing specialist. Her experience was great, but I come to find out that she was actually the community manager for Take Two and oversaw the entire community for Kerbal Space Program. And she has amazing graphic design skills, and she's a turbo geek when it comes to, data, and she can interpret all of this data. That kind of stuff, man, is so valuable, well beyond what she was brought on for. And so I just threw a bunch of stuff onto her plate and said, oh my God, you are what we've been looking for. Yeah. And of course, it's difficult as a small business owner because I make my cards very clear. I don't hold a lot of stuff to the chest and not tell people. So it gives them a lot of opportunity to kind of like ask for raises and screw me on that. But they all kind of generally understand where we're at because I let them know every single month that I get our finances, I put it to our staff so that they can see if we're struggling, if we're doing okay. And it helps them better understand my mood, because my mood, of course, is very structured toward how the business is doing. And look, it's a small business problem, all right? If the business is doing terrible, I'm feeling like shit. But if we're, doing $10,000 projects every 2 weeks, I'm on cloud 9. Yeah. As a small business. But, and it's built a lot of camaraderie where we had a staff member ask for a raise. I'm like, you're worth it, but you can clearly see I can't pay it. Yeah. I said, and if that's a problem for you, I will help you find another job. But I can only get to here. This is as far as I can get. I understand that you're worth more. I totally get it, but I can't do it. Like, I physically cannot afford it. I said, you can see the numbers. You can see how much you're charging us a month. It adds up. And, like, we come to an agreement where it's like, I get it. Help me out a little bit. I'll help you out. And that's, it kind of sucks for all parties involved because it's a tough conversation to have. But it builds that level of trust and understanding that if he ever needs something, I'm going to make sure that I make that happen for him, right? His dad is crazy into Dungeons and Dragons and loves tabletop gaming. And his dad asked for a D20, so right there, it's right there. The big-ass D20 that we have in rainbow silk film. It's going to be one of the time lapses for next week. And Bob Carden says, names are hard. Bob's right. Names are hard. Bob's names are really hard. Bob is great. Bob's actually one of the people that hang out on the Friday call. Bob is best known for his jokes that are incredibly harmful to people, and none of us ever get them, and we love everything about it. And Allison says it's especially hard to remember names you've not physically met people to. It is, and it's why I love that Zoom has the names on all of the calls. I love it, because then my dumbass can't forget it. I will always remember the meeting that I had at a forensic engineering firm that never ended up doing business with us, but I will remember the meeting. Because they gave me, they said, all right, real quick before we start, they drew the table, they drew where they were, and they put their names on it, and they gave it to me.
That's awesome.
So that I don't have to remember their names. And every time I look down, they called me and said, oh, you look down, you don't remember the names. I'm like, you gave me a cheat sheet. I have no reason to remember your names.
I generally don't remember my students' names until at least the third or fourth week, which is a little rough. But what I do like about it, though, is that I learn them through their work.
Yep.
And I can tell you, it's funny because, when students are handing me in their work for, a grade, I'm like, I already have your grade. It's already done. I watched you do the work. Yeah. I am very happy to give out A's. It is something that I love doing because when they're in the lab, they're doing the work, they're actually caring, they're actually working. It's very easy to do it. And I don't need to know their name. I know them by their work, And so it's like, do I need to know that your name is Joe? No, I don't. Because you know what the thing is that yes, we'll develop that relationship over time. I'm happy to. I can't wait to do it. But the thing is that I want to know what kind of person you are. And it kind of goes back to your hiring manager kind of view.
Yep.
Is that like, I know you by your work, and I know when you're a hard worker, and I can see
sometimes
it on the
shit
printer.
gets in the way.
Yeah. And like, I can see it in your code, or I can see it in your build. And I can go, oh my God, I love working with this person. It's fantastic. It's this, it's that. And I can go, okay, this is someone I can push. Or I can go, okay, this is someone who's not getting this. I'm not going to be as rough on them as someone who is getting it, who just shows off that they're being lazy now. You know?
And Bob says it's tough with employees. The ones that dive into the work usually make an impression, though. And it's true, right? If you're dealing with paid people and they just continually screw up, and you know it's because something's going on at home, something isn't right. As a business owner, you have to sit there and say, all right, it's not their fault, but it hurts me. I want to give them a chance. We have a couple of staff that were going through some very, very hard times, and they were missing deadlines. They were screwing up. They were lashing out. And, ultimately, I had a talk. We figured out what was going on. There's nothing that I could do to stop it, but it made me better understand. And now that things are going better for these people, it's like a night and day difference. And I told myself that I'm glad that I stuck it out. Now, I lost a few years of my life with all the stress that person put me through. But ultimately, I'm glad that I stuck it out because we now have a certain level of trust and understanding, and it's where I don't have to micromanage anymore. They know what their job is, they know what they have to do, and I believe that sometimes investing in those people, you're like, I know you're there, I know you're there. You just need to find the fact that you're there. And as soon as they find it, it's like that light switch, and they have turned into one of the most valuable people that you can be a part of. And it's like, it's disciples. And I don't want to get religious, but it is the idea of discipleship. And people that become disciples, whether it's of your practice, your business, your teaching, your whatever, are some of the most valuable people. Even though they may not ever make you money, they might cost you money. They help spread the word of what you do, and that is incredibly important because, let's be real, I can spend $100 an hour and find people that will make amazing things for me, and I would go under in a week.
Yeah.
Or I can pay as close to market rate as I can, take my time, find the right people, the ones that are going to fit with us both professionally and personally, and end up with people that will work their way up to being worth a lot more, but also understand that we can't pay $100 an hour because our finances don't physically allow it. And like, that to me is one of the most valuable things that I never learned in college, and it took some time. And, one question that we had is, how do you assess students' progress? But you just answered that. So, like,
yeah, I mean, progress for us though is not always linear. Like sometimes students actually make regression, like where they regress back to like a worse state.
Yep.
For us, it's not just like teaching you skills, but teaching you a work ethic. And work ethic is really, really hard to teach. One of my favorite methods that I've learned for like students that come in late is to just turn around and yell at them across the room, "You're fired," and tell them to go home for the day. And they're like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "You're fired." And they're like, "What do you mean I'm fired?" I'm like, "This is your third lateness in a row. You were no call, no show, no email, no nothing. I don't know what's going on. To me, you're just a late employee. You're fired."
Treating them as staff so they get the idea that there's value here.
Yep. Oh, wow. And then they're never late for the rest of the semester.
Yeah, because you kind of hit them with a little bit of reality. Their life just kind of clicked and things get better.
And you know what the thing is that like going like, look, I'm not going to mark you absent. I'm sending you home. What you're missing is the work for the day, which would equal out to your pay for the day.
Yep.
And also screaming at them across the room, as much as people don't like the idea of like telling other students what's going on. Like, I'll sit there and saying you're fired across the room and watching all the other students respond, it also teaches them a level of work ethic.
Yep. How often now, how many times do you have to say it? Because I figure maybe by the second or third person that gets fired, nobody else really screws with it? How long does it take?
Yeah, it doesn't really happen. Once it happens once in a lab, it never happens again. I've only done it 2 or 3 times over the last 5 years, so it's not like something I have to do often. Usually the first time someone's late, I go up to them, I'm like, what's going on? I told you when I handed you the syllabus, let me know what's going on so that way I can help you.
Yeah.
Like, we live in a mountainous area where the snow is bad, and so, like, we're pulling students from, like, 30 miles away sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a mountainous area where there's a valley and a mountain and they're 20 miles apart, they can have different weather in the same day.
Yep.
I
Lots
had one
of snow.
student,
We don't like snow here.
I had one student whose car was completely covered in ice. And he sends me a message saying, look, I'm going to be probably an hour late. And I said, when you get here, you get here. Thank you for the heads up. Be safe, And then he finally gets his car uncovered from the ice, and he sends me another message saying, my car's not starting. And I said, that is something telling you should not get on the road today.
Yep.
Stay home. You're not being marked absent. Stay home. I can give you an assignment. I can give you some makeup work.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I personally, as a human being, could not be okay with possibly hearing that you got in a really bad car accident just to make a class, Yep. And I say these things to these students at day one. Look, fall semester, we get pretty good weather. Spring semester, it's in the middle of the winter. You're going to get bad weather. Please get the text messages from the school. Please be getting your email from me to your phone. You might get a canceled class because I'm looking out the window and I'm going, no, it's not safe,
Well, and now with Zoom and Teams and all that, you could are you guys going to be adopting like a hybrid system for the spring semesters so that you can continue to educate without kind of that lapse, or no?
Well, this last year we were 100% in person for our labs, and we were online for our lectures.
Interesting.
So yeah, well, we have enough room where we can kind of spread you out. So
you're only a 500 kid campus, so yeah.
Masking, we did a lot. We had very, very little amount of cases on campus, which was fantastic. I think it was like something like 12.
Very, very little cases on campus, and then he coughs.
I apologize for that. I actually have a heart and lung issue. So that was one of the worst things about this whole thing was like going out and I know I'm going to cough even wearing a mask, and people are going to give you that look like, is it him?
It's like, him?
No, I'm sorry. It's just a lung issue.
No, I just found the juxtaposition funny.
Yeah. And then it's just funny because we have kept somewhat of a hybrid schedule.
Yeah.
And my CEO and president just said, she goes, there's no such thing as snow days anymore for us because we could just do it online.
It's true.
And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. We've always kind of had a policy of if school's canceled, we have a learning management system that we have students do online.
Yep.
Assign work, and have them so they're not missing hours,
And that's good because then they're getting what they're paying. They're getting what they're paying for. You may not be able to sleep in like you were expecting, but ultimately it allows the students that want that extra education to get it.
Yeah.
Now I want to shift gears a little bit because I know you've got a lot of really cool stuff that you're doing outside of the school. But before we get there, I think there's a decent segue question that we have, which is what is something interesting about you that's not on your resume?
Well, I kind of went over it. The fact that I did medieval combat,
okay.
And I was a blacksmith. But I know how to fight with swords, knives, daggers, maces, mauls, axes, flails, swords, javelins, spear, all that stuff. I was trained in it. So that was one of the fun things.
Are you the type of person that takes a flail or a mace to a gunfight?
I had a student who was a very, very avid gun fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, you're living in Scranton and the neighborhood I live in is not necessarily the best neighborhood. And I was like, well, first off, I grew up in Philly. Your idea of crime in Scranton is kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Just like their idea of car congestion is 3 cars at a red light. And they're like, the road's congested. And I'm like, no, it's not. But he was like, how do you defend yourself if someone came into your house? And I said, well, first off, there's no real straightaways in my house where you could really shoot me from a distance,
right?
And be, I couldn't get to you. I was like, and second off, I'm like, did you ever hear the 4-foot rule? Within 4 feet, a gun's effectiveness drops dramatically.
No, it's because of distance, right?
Yeah.
I believe the thing with a knife fight is the winner of the knife fight, or the loser of the knife fight dies on scene. The winner dies in the ambulance.
Yeah.
Because there's no winner in a knife fight.
I mean, not to be morbid or anything, but I was taught like how to use a dagger or knife properly. Yeah. You don't stab, you slash. Yep. You know, like it takes dozens of stabbings to really kill a person. That's why you see in the news when it's like someone's been killed by stabbing, it's like they've been stabbed 32 times.
Yeah, how many times was 50 Cent stabbed and shot and the dude is still alive?
Yeah. But you know, you can slash someone 4 times and they'll bleed out within minutes.
Yep.
And it's like, and it's not to be morbid or anything, but it's knowing how to effectively use the tool that you're using.
Now, of course,
you know, like
we don't condone violence. We don't condone knife fighting. We don't condone slashing people. YouTube algorithm. We are not condoning
my response
this.
To the student was, I said to him, I was like, I can defend myself if necessary. I have a history of it. But I said, if you really are afraid of someone breaking your house, it's like, go buy a riot shield. They're transparent. Someone can shoot into it. You know what you can do? You can push them up against the wall and disable them.
It's for my lathe, officer. It's for my lathe.
But you know what? Like, the thing is that, like, there's a difference between disabling someone and killing them, you know, or maiming them. And you can do it with a shield. That's why shields have been employed for thousands of years, you know? But yeah, that is a weird thing that most people don't know about me that just meet me. But yeah, and I've trained other people in fighting. So
Allison is asking, Bob says that your answer is, he said, is beard aficionado on the resume? Because he says that the beard is apparently quite good there.
Thank you.
Well, so there you go. She should put that on the resume clearly. Allison wants to know if we have lots of reenactments in the U.S. I know, like, I live in the South, so yeah, we've got a lot of, like, Civil War reenactments. The South will rise again! and other dumb shit, because apparently when you lose a war, your flag still, for some reason, is around. Don't ask me why, but that's definitely a thing. I know we have, like, a business medieval times that's a thing around the United States that does, like, I'm not going to call it real sword fighting and real jousting, but it's probably as real as most people are going to ever be able to see.
It's live theater.
They have jousting at the castle 3 miles from her all the time. See, she lives in the UK, so, like, there's a castle 3 miles from her.
It's not fair. It's not fair. We never built castles in the US.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
And I blame you, Allison, the damn British. If y'all wouldn't have been doing all this stupid taxation, we wouldn't have poured a bunch of shit into the harbor, and we could have had castles.
It would be a lot easier for me to get tea because I'm a huge tea fan. So it'd be easier for me to get good quality tea in the U.S. and not have to import it or get it shipped to me. But
please tell me you watch the channel The Spiffing Brit then.
No, I've never heard of it.
God, go watch that channel.
Okay,
especially if you're a PC gamer. The dude just likes to find exploits, and his whole thing is a cup of Yorkshire Gold. I've never had the tea, but it's just hilarious to me. He always makes reference to the Queen, and I think the channel's phenomenal. The content, it's all about, like, breaking games and finding exploits. So if you're a gamer, you'll enjoy that.
Yeah.
But he did a whole series on YouTube exploits, and that's how I found him.
But to answer Allison's question, there are several different reenactment groups around the U.S. They get together for different events and things like that. One of the most popular is the Scadians, or the Society for Creative Anachronism. There's their SCA. They are very, very into it. A lot of them border on medievalist more than they are like Rennies or Renaissance fair goers, because, like, there's the Renaissance fair, and it's like cool. I'm not knocking it. Love them. Go to them myself. It's a great place to get a Scotch egg if you know what that is. Those are places where, like, people are like, you know, they're wearing fairy wings and stuff like that. They don't have a clear view of history. Where medievalists are like, they study the Middle Ages. They are interested in wearing clothing that's appropriate for it. You know, like wearing a tunic, wearing an under tunic, not just a tunic, not just a surcoat. Wearing all the different levels of the garb, you know, those are the types of people I used to hang out with a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, like, you know, I learned how to do hand stitching to make my garb, to make my clothing.
I want to learn that.
Yeah.
I want to learn that. But I know I'm going to... How many times did you stab yourself before you got it right?
Not too bad, because like the thing is, like I wasn't trying to make like really perfect clothing. I was trying to make stuff that was like I could go in and fight with, and if it tears, it tears.
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
Like we used to say that like garb wasn't true garb unless you bled in it, sweat in it, or had sex in it. So
yeah, I can't segue from that. So let's talk about the cool project that you're working on. So I need to switch my camera. And I have to bring this up. I have to switch my camera so the folks at home can see it. You, sir, are working on a 3D printer, and this thing is all manners of really freaking cool. So can you describe what this is, what it's for, and why?
Okay, so I'm building what's called a SCARA arm, which is a totally different type of arm that you would see in robotics, where it all rotates around that single axis, that Z-axis that you're seeing in the middle there.
Right here.
Yeah. So that motor right there that's below it is going to move a lead screw up and down inside of C-channel extrusion.
Yep.
And it's going to move those two other motors that are on a plate. And those motors, all their job is to do is either rotate that first arm.
Yeah, it's a belt.
Which that bottom one does. Yeah.
Right.
You can see the gearing system there.
Yep.
Or that second one that's above it, that's going to move the further arm out.
Yep.
And all they are is to move those arms in XY coordinates. So it's not quite set up yet. I haven't gotten that much further, but there's going to be a hot end or on the very, very edge of that furthest extrusion. So if you go up to the other one, the other image, you'll see that extrusion hanging out by itself. The hot end will be there. It will be a bowed-in system. And so really, really lightweight. Those two motors don't have to move a lot of weight back and forth.
Yeah, as long as it's rigid, there's not a lot of stress on it.
There's nothing, you know?
And because of lever arms,
like using like
they
a
don't
mosquito
have to
magnum is what I'm thinking for that end.
Okay.
And basically there will be a build plate underneath it, and it will be a heated build plate. And the whole emphasis for this was to be able to make something that's about 4 feet tall in build volume, with about 2 feet by 2 feet, or 600 millimeters square of build space that I can fit through a normal door in a home or move it with a car.
Because SCARAs can fold up. I mean, it makes them really easy to move.
Yeah, so you can see how easy it is. The funniest thing about it was I bought a resin 3D printer just to be able to print some of the parts that I needed to custom fab for this FDM printer.
Hey, well, that's the joys of 3D printing. Now, why did you do resin? Because, I mean, you have access to mills. Is it just because you would have needed way more setups than you care to do? Or
Oh, yeah. If you zoom in again, you can actually see where that cross member is, where the little X is. Yeah, that whole thing is one 3D printed part.
Yes, that will be a problem.
That would be a problem. Very difficult. Not to mention what you're not seeing is that underneath like that gear and right above it on the other one, I need to embed bearings and some thrust bearings so I can have clean movement, you know? So like there's some stuff that needs to happen in there. I'm going to be using UHMW as a bearing source. And if people are not familiar with it,
ultra high molecular weight polyethylene.
Yeah, and it's a very, very low friction material.
Cutting boards are made out of them.
Yeah, cutting boards are made out of it, but also it's used in aerospace.
Yep.
For materials like in wings on planes and jets and stuff, to be able to have a frictionless system.
Yep.
That can bend thousands of times without having any problems.
I like that you're using a big plate here. Are those probably MGN 12s or MGN 15s?
Yep. They're MGN 12s, and the plate itself that's highlighted in a lighter color is going to be laser cut out of high strength aluminum, 7075.
Yep.
So it will contain, it'll be very, very lightweight, but it will be a very, very hard system, very rigid to be able to mount everything to.
Well, and that's the trick with SCARA, because of like how they work. Aluminum extrusions are not heavy. These, the actual printed parts here are not that heavy. And as long as the printed parts can be rigid, the whole system is actually quite rigid. Now you will likely have some sag, especially as you get higher up, but you can account for that in software, or you can even just make it really rigid for where it attaches. And I think scaras are one of the prettiest style of 3D printers, because just the way the arm moves and the way that everything has to be interpolated for it to function, it's a very like pretty thing. Whereas Cartesian is, I don't know, Cartesian's like the it just works. Delta is the it just works, and someone with, you know, an engineering degree with a background in motion platforms built deltas. And scaras are, you gave an engineer an unlimited budget and they found the most efficient way to do something.
Yeah, basically. And it's funny because like we have a Delta printer in our lab, and it's there to show the Delta platform.
Right.
And Deltas, they excel at speed, but the thing is that they can barely move weight. So
right. Yeah.
You're stuck to a Bowden. And, you know, students go like, well, why do I want to use this? And I'm like, well, they're used in packaging a lot because they can move things very, very fast.
Yeah, they're pick and place machines.
Yeah. And that's where you often see them. So I wanted to have it in the lab just to show that kind of system.
Oh, for sure.
With this, what's really cool is it's a thought experiment as much as it is rigidity, as much as it is like I can do something and I can spend the money on a better milled build plate and less extrusion, you know? And also one of the things is I can fold it up, and if I move or leave my shop, I can put it in a normal vehicle and move it, and I don't have to disassemble it too much. One of the other things that was really cool was I threw a lot of these parts into generative design to see if there were more efficient designs for it.
Cool.
And there really weren't. So like it's kind of interesting to see, you know, what's going to happen. All of the 3D printed parts that are going to happen are going to be printed with Sierra Tech blue.
Yeah, the tough blue.
Yeah, on the Anycubic Photo Mono X. So
how are you dealing with shrinkage?
That's going to be another thing. So I'm running tests right now.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, it's one of the things I teach in the lab, so it's good that I do it myself. Where it's like print out something that's just like a small length of, or print out just like a slice of like that bottom part of where there's a gear, there's a bearing space, there's an extrusion space, so you can test a bunch of different fits and see what's going to happen. Yeah. You know,
I find that
and then
the
make your
tough blue is one of the toughest materials to print in. It is so viscous. It needs to be very warm. Like it wants to be above 30°C when it prints.
Yeah, which is not hard in my house, especially in the middle of the summer.
Well, yeah, in the middle of summer, but I'm thinking like dead of winter. If it's below 25°C, it gets so thick that it doesn't print well. Yeah, it does. It shrinks about 15% more than regular resin.
Wow.
In my experience, but you know, I'm doing a whole Back to Basics series, and I tried Lychee Slicer, and I am never going back to Chitu Box. Never going back. Lychee Slicer, it's free. They have a paid version, but it's only like $30 a year, which is nothing for what they're offering to you. But for the price of that software, even on the free version, which is more than enough for most people, it's pretty great. Now, I will say Chitu Box 1.9 does have, you know, the ability to, you know, deal with calibration. Lychee Slicer does put that behind their paywall, but like $30 a year for a good resin slicer is not that bad, because Chitu Box is terrible. If you haven't used it yet, it's pretty much garbage.
It crashes a lot for me.
Dude, I don't know if you watched the video. It hard crashed I had to load a backup because Windows would not load. My computer would not post.
That's awful.
It was awful. And like, I recognize that everybody's experience with Chitu Box is different. That's mine. And like, part of the video, I said, oh, hey, they have this ability to check for islands. I check for islands, then I go back and see if I can find it. My model disappeared.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And, like, all I was doing was just, like, messing around with the Benchy for the video. But, like, if that was a client part, and I just lost, like, 3 hours worth of work, I'm rage quitting.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's cool that you're doing this out of resin, because, like, I could see this being made out of, you know, some sheet metal, like some sheet goods and some milled parts, but then you gotta weld it all together and all that kind of thing.
Well, then you start introducing all sorts of other issues. Like, people don't realize that, like, welded and fabricated metal has heat deformation. There's all sorts of other issues.
Oh yeah.
Also, the weight that I'm going to get and the milling time for some of these parts would be ridiculous. So, like, I don't know. I think that there's always a story about, like, lathes are one of the coolest machines inside of a machine shop because they can build themselves, you know? And so, like, I'm using a 3D printer to build another 3D printer, you know?
And see, that to me is what RepRap and 3D printing was always about. The self-replicating machine that can also make whatever you want. And the fact that we're able to get, like, good resin printers for under $1,000, but of course, remember, resin is toxic. We always have to say that. That's like one of my catchphrases now, that resin is toxic. Literally, this morning, we did the unboxing for a channel video. I think it's going to be Wednesday's or Friday's video of the Anycubic Wash and Cure Plus. Yeah. Those things make, you know, resin 3D printing effectively on a consumer level now, because you don't really have to handle the resin. Because, like, that is truly the problem for me, is dealing with the toxic chemicals. And because I can't recommend it to average users that don't understand you can't wash resin in water. I don't care if it's water washable resin. Don't wash it in your friggin' sink. Don't touch it. Don't inhale it. Don't, like, where you don't have these precautions with FDM, or nowhere near as serious.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is, like, people don't understand off-gassing properly.
No, they do not.
So, like, it's funny because, like, I had this conversation with my mom when she bought a new car, and she's like, "Oh, I love that new car smell. You love the smell of plastic off-gas in that."
Yes.
She's like, "What?" And I was like, I don't think people understand that there's a difference between I'm able to make a part and the part is cured.
Yes.
So curing time takes a lot longer for parts. And, like, it's just like how, like, you know, the Hoover Dam is not even done setting. The concrete is not done setting. They cast it so quickly. So it's a dam that's literally getting stronger every day, you know? And you can take that same thought process to anything that's viscous that needs to go into become a solid state, you know, or what we consider a solid state. It's going to be off-gassing. It's going to be curing and stuff like that for a very long time. So you need to be careful around it, you know? Yes, the part came out of the wash and cure, and it's got a little bit of isopropyl on the outside. Just don't touch it with your bare hands yet. If you're not used to it,
don't use isopropyl.
Well, like, I love isopropyl because, like, I'm old school in the sense of I've been around casting for a very long time now.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm very used to precautions. I'm used to how I hold my breath, not breathing over an open container, things like that.
Yep.
But, like, it's something you get used to, but you shouldn't get used to it.
Right. Yeah, you will eventually get used to the smell of resin if you don't have VOC filters, and you shouldn't, because that is it's literally causing damage. And I anytime that I have to open up the printer with Tough Blue in it, I have to turn up the VOC filters, because Tough Blue is the stinkiest resin I've ever. Most other resins have very little smell. Tough Blue specifically is really, really rough. But it's a great resin, and it's like, what, $60 a liter or something ridiculous?
Yeah, it's not bad. And, like, I'm like, you know what, we've talked about it before, but, like, if you want to have a cough like mine, do a lot of those types of things. Breathe over your resin, and, you know, do woodworking without any type of face mask or anything like that. Oh yeah,
that'll screw you up quick.
You can have a cough just like mine. I'm your walking PSA.
Yeah. And have you messed around with resin doping yet? We use Tenacious, the flexible Tenacious resin. We dope every one of our resins with it. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so great.
I haven't played with it that much yet. I've just started dipping my foot into it because, like, I learned resin printing on between a Connex 350.
Oh boy,
printer,
howdy.
And
boy, howdy. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I learned resin printing between that and a Formlabs printer. Okay. So yeah, so it's I've had an interesting experience with that. Connexes are amazing printers. If you've never gotten to see one print in real life, they're fantastic to see. The one that I was on leaked really badly from its head, so you couldn't leave it on without, like, idling.
Right.
So you can only turn it on jobs. Yeah.
So Bob wanted to ask, and I guess you haven't dealt with this yet, but I have. Did the odd shrinkage rate of resin cause you any issues with mechanical parts? In my experience, it has, because we find that resin will shrink a little bit XY, so like standard resins will shrink 1 to 3% XY. That's also pretty standard for injection molding, so as long as your tolerances are the same, you should be fine. It's the Z elongation issue that I still have problems with, and I can't get it right. It's gotten better. Like, as softwares get better, they're just accommodating for it. But I remember back in the day when we were looking at getting a Form 2, I had Formlabs do a print for me. It was an 8-inch print. Over the 8-inch print, it was 140 thousandths of an inch over 8 inches. Like, guys, that's a non-trivial amount. That's a little over 1/10 of an inch. You're over 1/8 of an inch more than you should. Like, the holes were visibly ovals. Yeah. And, like, I just did it. They're not clean yet, so I can't grab them, but I just did some resin parts that are huge on the Saturn, and I'm not seeing oval holes, but it all has to do with cross-sectional area. Now, printers like the Prusa SL1 and other printers where their vats move or they've got wipers so they can help reduce those peel forces, that issue is not that big anymore. And, like, it is a problem, right? Ooh. And Bob says Chris Russell did an MK3, so Prusa Mark III, in resin in a video series, and it was a serious problem. And I have absolutely no doubt. The thing is, the further you are away from your build plate, the better resin printing gets. That's why they ask, like, softwares will say, oh, do you want a 5mm gap? That's basically the minimum that you can have and maintain your quality. I like to go with 7, sometimes 10mm, because it gives a support some time to actually print. And, like, we had a client that ordered a resin part. He needed it overnight. I said, all right, here's the deal. Overnight resin parts aren't going to look great. They're going to look better than you expect. But from my perspective, they're not going to look great. I said, so if you're okay with this and you just need it very quickly, that's fine. You will not deal with tolerances. Now, it was just a fancy part. It didn't need to have tolerances. It was just, it's a figurine. He didn't care. So that's no big deal. But when you're doing, parts that actually matter, you take a little bit of extra time to do it right.
I think that it's one of the things that's hard to get across to people who are learning how to use 3D printers.
Yep.
There's all sorts of different methodologies for calibration. There's all sorts of different methodologies for what's a good test print. I'm a big fan of just printing 10mm cubes. Just to dial in your printer a little bit, just to make sure it's dialed in before you start a big print.
Yep.
And I use them that in FDM, and then I say verify it.
Always.
Verify. Take a caliper to it. Verify your data.
Yep.
Because how accurate did you get it? And then what's really funny is there was one old school machinist that works in my lab, and he was like, "Oh, well, I don't like the fact that you only measure the 100th millimeter." And I'm like, but do you realize that that's a fraction of what you measure to when you talk about a thousandth of an inch?
A hundredth millimeter is what Dave of the EEV blog calls half a bee's dick. It's incredibly tiny and does not matter anymore.
No.
And that I sit there and say, yep, I have to agree. If you are trying to get to the 100th of a millimeter, unless you are using some of the latest and greatest Mitutoyo, metrology grade tools, and you're using scanners that use CT, and your accuracy on your calipers is not that fine. It is not that fine, and never will.
One of the companies that we have students that go to work for, they have CNC machines that measure up to 6 decimal places,
and that's fine. Those 6 decimal place CNC machines are 6.
These are $1 million machines
plus
that are designed to do this kind of work, and the thing is that what it really breaks down to, and I think the funniest thing about the arguments between CNC and 3D printing is that most CNCs aren't that accurate that they can really compete with 3D printers now, because
3D printers are getting more accurate.
They're getting more accurate, but there's features on 3D printers that you can get that CNCs just aren't good at, because every time you change that setup to get a different angle or a different cut or a different this or a different that, you've destroyed any sense of tolerance. So that's why, like, when we talk about things like soft draw setups and fixtures, they're so important when you're doing multi-cut setups on CNCs. So yeah, I mean, but like 3D printers, they're just building the whole thing.
Olivia,
have you ever seen DMG's systems?
Yeah, DMG Mori, they're amazing.
Yeah, the hybrid CNC 3D printers. I mean, that's what I think the future of manufacturing is. But
I agree, because then you can print in metal, you mill it down, you have your final part. Because like if you're doing like turbocharger turbines
and it's 5-axis, so it's like it's all the parts moving, not the machine. And
there's nothing prettier than 5-axis, man. I've got a buddy with a flying 5, and its dimensions are measured in feet. It's 17 by 28 by 6.5 feet.
Wow.
With a pair of 4x8 wide tables. It's a router, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big flying 5. So the 4x8 tables move. The big upper gantry moves, and the gantry holds the x-axis, which has the Z, A, and C all in one unit. Dude, this thing it's got a 50-horse head. This sumbitch can hog chips. His other machine is a Herco VMX 64.
Okay.
And I always laugh at that Herco because I was training on a VF2 Super Speed. The VF2 Super Speed can fit inside of the chamber of the VMX 64. It's 64 inches worth of cut in the x-axis.
Yeah.
This machine is from the 90s.
Yeah.
And when he installed it, he did not level it before. Like, so he brought it in, got it craned in, and he leveled it the next morning. The next morning, the table had gone all the way over because of how good this machine was. It was off by less than half a degree. But this machine was in such good shape, and it had so little friction that the table moved overnight.
That's
it was
crazy.
So cool. Allison says, I'm going to have to disappear, but just got to say a great big thank you to Cole and yourself. I found this to be so interesting. I'll catch up on the end later. Allison, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I know it's always a little bit later. That's why we try to do these like midday for myself and Cole. That way our viewers across the pond are able to hang out. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Take a break.
Absolutely.
And Monday morning, let's make awesome. That's what we do around here. So we'll see you later, Allison. Thanks for hanging. And Allison's been with us. She's been one of our... I'd like to say most active viewer. She is.
That's awesome.
Tries to hang out on every live stream. She does not own a 3D printer, dude. She came to us from all the Cricut videos that we did, where I was yelling at Cricut, and she has background in metal 3D printing.
Ooh.
Her story's amazing. She told it to me in private, so I don't want to talk about it, but her story's absolutely amazing, and I think she's gonna find her place doing something in additive manufacturing, and I am so happy to be like on that forefront of people that are helping her get reinvigorated in this. Because, man, I'll tell you, burnout in this industry is tough, because when you decide you want to go into AM, there's like, okay, if you get an engineering degree like a Mech E, and then you specialize in AM, you can fall back, right? I've got 2 freaking business degrees, and I've specialized in AM for the past 10 years of my life. I've been doing nothing but 3D printing professionally.
Yeah.
Brother, this is it. Like, there is no other career path for me. Because, like, I have not been utilizing my degrees other than, like, running my own business. So,
yeah.
Like, COVID has taught me that I can't ask about job holes anymore, because everybody's had a freaking job hole. You just have to look past the fact that if you didn't work in the year of 2020, that was not unreasonable, that was not unusual, right? But if I come out and say, well, I guess I'm going to shut down the company and go into a real job, I won't get hired. Because while I have the practical experience, I've ran metal 3D printers. I have over 30 3D printers here now. I used to have 25, now we have over 30. I don't have the degree, nor the practical, like, I can run the machines, I can fix them, but I may not exactly understand the science of what I'm doing. I just know how to replicate it. And that's why I like the YouTube channel, because it's Cunningham's Law, right? Say the wrong thing and the internet will correct you. AVE, by the way, if you don't know his channel, you really should. Because, like, that entire channel is what I believe machine shops are. It's just like, low-key cussing and making fun of things. But you know,
I can tell you for a fact it actually is.
Yeah. I've been around enough machine shops where it's like, you know, but there's still like a respect, because like it's generally just a bunch of old hardened dudes that are gonna talk terrible about the younger generations, and anytime there's a female present, they are the most perfect, wonderful gentleman you've ever met. So it's just, it's so funny, right? Because it's like
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like cussing and all the worst things until there's like, and even if top management comes in, none of that changes. But you put a female on the floor, and all of a sudden everybody's on their best behavior, and I think it's the most hilarious thing, because I have ladies that I'm friends with, and of course Amber will come with me to machine shops, and like all of a sudden they see her and it's like a switch flicks and they're all like perfect, and she's like, I don't care. Go back to your old vulgar selves. It's so much more fun when you all are just shitting on each other from across a room for no reason other than because you can.
Well, I had this wonderful student, and she was definitely one of the guys, and it was really funny.
Yeah.
Because like you could see like guys wanted to try to treat her like a woman, like, oh, she's a lady, we shouldn't do things, and she would just like make so much fun of them.
Yeah.
And like bring them down, and they'd be like, oh, you're one of the guys, you know? And it's like, cool, but like,
it sucks, because like
this
is why women don't get into this industry.
But like, why'd you even have to go that route? Like, just treat her like an equal. And guess what? Because she's an equal. Like, yeah. It has nothing to do with anything. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I really like the idea of doing like women in STEM and like all these types of things, because like, one, I mean, I know this is going to be a controversial statement as I say it, but like, I like teaching women a lot more. They're smarter.
It's true.
They're more project oriented.
You know why women are smarter, things. Right?
What's up?
You know why women are smarter, right?
Because they have a stronger corpus callosum, so the two halves of their brain are better.
All right, he's using real math. It's because they don't believe that making a 3D printer to go 10 Gs in a centrifuge is an actually reasonable thing to do, because they wouldn't put themselves in a ridiculous situation like that, where if it...
What are we at? 10,000 subs that we need for that?
10,000 subs. And you know what the best part is? My better three-quarters is a nurse. So we'll even have a nurse on staff when something inevitably goes wrong.
We need to make this happen. I think we need to add, like, we need to make like some like marketing
channel milestones.
Yeah, like we need to do this.
God, if we could get to 10,000 by the end of the year, that'd be great. Like, cause like it is clearly no it's no hidden fact that we are trying to make a living on YouTube.
Yeah.
We produce 3 main channel videos a week, 2 separate live streams, and 2 time lapses a week. You're talking no less than 6 different pieces of content a week for a channel with less than 1,500 subscribers. Like, we are acting like a channel that's way bigger. I am spending money like we are a channel that's much bigger. I found myself at 6 o'clock this morning scrolling through Craigslist looking for new lights that I can bring in. I bought wide-angle lenses for all of our cameras so we can do top-down shots and bigger shots that make more sense. I should not be doing this, but I'm doing it.
Don't you think that your viewers would love update images of this thing being built? And then think about like the kind of event we could have.
Cole, you are the worst kind of person that I love the most. You are an enabler, and I tell myself too, I am an enabler. Like, I told Amber, I'll buy dinner if you buy ice cream. She's like, we're gonna have ice cream? I'm like, we are now. She's like, I can get used to this. I said, I can too. Because my brother's not here, so we can put ice cream in the freezer, and we don't have to worry about, like, taking up a bunch of freezer space, right?
Like, have you ever seen those memes where it's, like, everyone at the dinner table says, like, no to the dessert menu at the restaurant, so you don't get dessert? I'm like, no, I'm still going to ask about dessert. I'll make you all sit there while I eat dessert.
And that means everybody else is going to get it, too. Yeah.
Yeah, because once that floodgates opens, you know, once you say, like, oh, well, you have a brownie with ice cream. Okay, I will take that brownie with ice cream. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Like, all of a sudden, everyone's like, well, what else do you have?
See, and then, Cole, what we should do, though, is we should have, like, a team of students work on this with us, right? You're the college professor that oversees it so we can get the funding through the school or something. Then I hire everybody as 1099s. You guys write off the entire trip. You spend a week in Florida, okay? We do it like maybe, late. We either do it in January, where it's absolute shit weather for you. You come here, it's like, mid 60s, high 70s. You guys go to the beach for a couple of days. We find a good reason that we need to take this to the beach. We write off the entire thing, and we have and we call it a vacation, but we work.
I think we should look at sponsorships, and we should look at some grant funding to scientifically test.
Like, who sponsors this?
Oh, come on. We could get people. Rich, Green Gate 3D, I think we need to sponsor this.
I'm gonna tell him, Rich, I need a bunch of filament.
What about MakerBox? Matt Gorton at MakerBox, he should sponsor this.
I feel like I could start like a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's do this, man. This is how fun happens. This is how we're trying a very important scientific experiment to see if centripetal force
science.
Because think about it this way. You've got all those ideas of like,
it's
how
true.
do you make artificial gravity?
We've put 3D printers in space. We know they work. We can print upside down.
The thing is, that's where, but like ISS is 0G. Think about like when they're talking about those centripetal rings that they're going to use to get like crews to Mars without losing bone density and things like that. What about when they need a 3D printer? At
what G level do kinematic motion systems start to fail? Then we can put a Cartesian, a core XY. Everyone was joking, you should build a Voron V0. I'm like, I'm not spending $700 to build a stupid Voron V0 for one video. What's the goal?
Wait, you don't want a speed benchy?
Bob Carnes is asking, what is the goal for this? What is the goal for this funding? Bob, it is to build that crazy, ridiculous centrifuge for 3D printers so we can definitely not screw around by putting 3D printers inside of a centrifuge for no other reason than because we can. It was what we were talking about on the call last night.
I think it's something that we should absolutely pursue. Absolutely.
I mean, look, I've always told people, do not threaten me with a good time, because this is a good time. It's going to be a lot of really cool videos, and like the YouTube channel Stuff Made Here, right? Is that the channel? The guy that used to work for Four Moms? I'm pretty sure that's him. Bob says you don't need to spend $700 on a V0. Just wait for Jerry to get angry at it and pick it up cheap. We have a couple of kids on the call, so we have Jerry, Brad, and Justin. Brad and Justin both work with me, so I've hired, we literally have brought on people that are under the age of 18 because they're brilliant. But Jerry is building a V0 Voron, and he is having some trouble with it. But like, I'm just trying to stay away from the Voron community. They're so freaking toxic right now. And if we do it, not add Clipper to it, because then it's going to only add more toxicity to this.
Well, that's like, the thing is, like, that's a lot of the reason why I've stayed out of a lot of community stuff is that, I'm there for the education. I'm there for the fun.
I'm there to make cool shit.
I'm also not there to, like, make speed benchies. I don't need, that's like the modern day, like putting a 4-inch can on a Honda Civic, Yeah. Like, I don't have that question that I need answered.
Hey, my
Honda
has a cat delete, but it's only because the cats are 19 years old and they just don't work anymore.
I drove an Isuzu Rodeo that it was the pipe after the catalytic converter was broken, and it just hung off, and like it just it was what it was. The pipe was there, and I left it there so the cops didn't stop me for having no tail or anything.
Man, it's why I love and hate Florida. We have no emissions guidelines, and I also love the fact that the code for, what do you think the code for bad catalytic converters in a car is?
I have no idea.
P0420. And if you don't think that there was some computer engineer there just snickering as he's typing everything
in,
it's 420.
What was it? Did you ever hear like ID10 IT error?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the PEBCAC, the problem emanates between keyboard and chair.
Yeah. One of my favorite statements to say to students is like the old tech jargon of garbage in, garbage out. Whenever they tell me like something's wrong, I'm like, there's either that or I do WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
Yep.
Yeah. That's always great to use on students.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, hey, I know you're going to be starting or redoing a company, so please plug
Yes.
what you got, and then I think we probably call this one. It's been almost 3 hours, so I definitely kept you longer than I scheduled it for. But hey, thanks for hanging, man. This is
we had a great time.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I will be launching a new product design company. Not ready to kind of release too much yet.
Okay.
But I'm sure I'll be on this to get this thing again, or something else, and we'll talk about it more.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure having you on. I think that we really we not only covered 3D printing and education, but we went into the weeds. And that's what I love about this podcast. It is just all of a sudden you're just driving, and all of a sudden you're like, what if I just turned here? And whoa! And eventually we'll find our way back, but it might be 20 miles down the road. And that's what I love about them old country roads. You don't know where they go, but apparently it's West Virginia. But yeah, Cole, I appreciate it, man. Any people you want to say hi to before anything like that? Anything you want to say before we call it?
Love my wife. She's the wind beneath my wings. She's the reason I do everything. Honestly, she bought me my first 3D printer.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like we wouldn't be here without her.
So she's the real enabler.
Oh my God, yeah. That's the only problem with us is that like we do enable each other. So that's a good thing and a bad thing, you know.
Bob said there's a baby rat rig project starting now too. He just sent me the video. I'll send it. I'll email it to you, Cole, so you can see it. It looks definitely. Like a weird contraption of a Prusa Mini. Had a weird love child with a Maker Gear and has a very toxic community behind it.
Wonderful.
But yeah, anyways, guys,
that.
I hope you all enjoyed this one. This one was a lot of fun. Cole, go ahead and stay on because we'll do a post show because it's gonna take me a bit to kill this stream. But stay safe out there, everybody. Don't forget to call your loved ones, and as always, keep making awesome. Also, happy 91st birthday to my grandmother. See you guys later.
Happy birthday, Grandma.